Uh, Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. Sensei Alba. Turn on. Yep. Let's see. Oh, there we go. I guess I'm subscribed. How you all doing? Hey there, number one. And our story today is about a meaningful life. Now, what does that mean? What is a meaningful life? Has anyone got? Let's see. Lynn, good morning. So, Lynn, what's a meaningful life? What do you think? Got any ideas? Let's see what Mr. Rubin has to say.
It's time for a different way to pay for healthcare.
Oh, it does.
Crowd Health was made with you in mind.
Oh,
We saw insurance companies.
yeah, good luck with that.
Won't be able to. I don't know how that fully works logistically within the company. But to the broader point, yeah, banks got to start doing it. Hotels, that is one thing for sure. Hotels and restaurants.
Hello, everyone. I wrote this article recently for one of Canada's major newspapers, the National Post.
Jordan
I'm reading it for those of you
P.
who would rather watch and listen. It's entitled, DIE Must Die. This is why.
Ooh,
I recently
right.
resigned from my position as full tenured professor at the University of Toronto. I am now Professor Emeritus, and before I turned 60. Emeritus is generally a designation reserved for superannuated faculty, albeit those who had served their term with some distinction. I had envisioned teaching and researching at the U of T full time until they had to haul my skeleton out of my office. I loved my job. And my students, undergraduates and graduates alike, were positively predisposed toward me. But that career path was not meant to be. There are many reasons, including the fact that I can now teach many more people and with less interference online. But here's a few more. First, my qualified and supremely trained heterosexual white male grad students, and I've had many others, by the way, are no longer eligible upon graduation for university research positions, despite stellar scientific dossiers. This is partly because of diversity, inclusivity, and equity mandates.
Oops. Uh-oh. Not going to go there. Or should we? What does that mean? You should go look at that guy up. I wish they put his whole name there. Let's see, we go to his website. Yes, Jordan B. Peterson. He's got some really good blogs. He's really good at it. He's a psychologist. He doesn't have the same nom de plume of shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, but he is one of those guys. He's been in the single institution line of being a scholastic, but he's not. He's definitely a scholar, and he speaks a great deal of, and he also quotes many great scholars and gives you lists of their books. So that's a good thing to go look at. And I played you yesterday, my good friend Max Igon, and Yeah, this is a good one. Let's hear a little bit of this.
Hello, it's Yang Kim. I'm an immigrant, I'm a woman, and I'm also a proud conservative.
Ooh, she's a proud conservative. I'm happy.
Becoming corrupted, because the pain of existence will corrupt you without a saving meaning. And it also seems to me that you can sell the story that me too. Seems to me that it's not easy to understand that other people are genuinely different from you and how they might be different. And maybe even more difficult is to understand that the differences, although frustrating, are also necessary.
Yeah.
It isn't obvious to me that anyone wants to live a meaningless existence. I don't think you can live a meaningless existence without becoming corrupted, because the pain of existence will corrupt you without a saving meaning. And it also seems to me that you can sell the story that meaning is to be found in responsibility. When I've tried to sell that story to myself, I seem to buy it, and when I've tried to communicate it with other people, it renders them silent. Large crowds of people silent.
Silent.
And that's strange, because I'm not sure why that is. It's perhaps because the connection between responsibility and meaning had never been made in that explicitly somehow.
It's
Because
cold here.
meaning gets
I need this.
contaminated with happiness or something like that, but it's to be found in responsibility. And then you could say, well, there isn't any responsibility that's more compelling than trying to aid things in the manifestation of their divine form. That should be an adventure that could be sold. And I don't know why the church can't do it. I don't understand that. And because it seems to me that that's something that I've done, at least
We'll let
in
him
part.
talk for a while.
That
I'm gonna go
accounts for
make some
the
more
strange
breakfast.
popularity of the biblical lectures in particular.
Oh,
And but I've also, and I do believe that. I do believe that the right striving is to attempt with all your heart to encourage things to develop along that, towards that divine goal. Like, what else would you possibly do? Once you think that through, it's like you're always aiming at something that's better, or you wouldn't be aiming. You're always moving towards something that's better, or you wouldn't be moving. So then why wouldn't you move towards the greatest good? Yeah. Well, it's because it's terrifying, I suppose, in part. But then I've tried to put that into practice in my life, and it's tearing me into pieces. Yeah. I asked you to define love, and I'm going to define it on my terms now, and that is the best in me serving the best in you. And I think that's the deepest pleasure. That's the deepest and most lasting pleasure, and it is the most fundamental motivation. It's the inexhaustible source, because if I can do that, whenever I do that, I feel that I'm being properly. And there's nothing better than that.
And you can extend that to the world, to situations, places.
Well, I think that's what you're supposed to do by accepting the proposition that God is love. I mean, it's God is love and God is logos. Those are both there. So then the question, to some degree, is the rank order of the two. And I would say God is truth within love, and that's the animating spirit of mankind. And that's a way different claim than the one the atheists are going after, by the way.
Yeah.
Think about it, everyone. Is truth in the service of love not the best animating spirit of mankind when it isn't pursuing an aberration? We can all ask ourselves that question.
I think that's a good question to ask.
Thank you, John.
What I mean is I think it reorients us to the
We can put
fact.
that on a T-shirt. Is truth in the service of love a good question?
I guess I see them as more. I see them as more interpenetrating. I want to make a stronger relationship between them than just a relationship of service. I mean, this.
How about her, man?
Yeah, that's
okay.
why I like the term realization. That love is a way of affording realization, and the deepest knowing.
Oh, the deepest knowing. Yes. So that's been my life's path. what our friend was saying there, that Jordan was saying, and he's quite. You should check him out, right? So let's see. What are you saying here? Esoteric, hey buddy. Technology 101. Yep, exactly. Love is technology 101, pretty much, right? Oh, what did I do with my breakfast? Put it somewhere. Ah, here it is. And so, what are you guys reading? What are you thinking? What's up? Let's chat. Get me into a story. And we're talking about the meaning. Hey, Anthony. Breakfast time. Rice, beans, tomatoes, egg, cheese. And a crisp English muffin. So, one of the reasons, let's see what I'm saying here. I think they're both the same because Christmas time, I celebrate Christmas 24/7, 365. To me, Christmas ain't one day. Every day. And as our friend Jordan was talking about, the most important thing is making others happy. What makes me happy is making others happy. In my developmental stage, I was, from birth to 32, I had all these great teachers, beginning with my grandmother and my mother, my Aunt Gracie, and then Grandpa Stoll, Mike, his son, was more my father than my father. Mike Stoll, he did things for me. My parents, they sent me to schools and they, clothed me. But in a certain way, it was good that they ignored me. And my mother told me it kind of on her deathbed. And I said, you've given wealth to all my brothers and sisters, especially my sisters, paid everything. They finally sent them to school, bought their houses, bought their cars for all their children through college, and all their children went to state school, saving. I went to a school that was a private school, but it was totally paid for, right? And like when my parents sent me to college, they gave me a $10 bill. That was it. Anyway, my mom said to me, I said, so why, like my Aunt Gracie, she had a great apartment in Tudor City, which is right across from the United Nations, right on 2nd Avenue. And it's great kind of little, it's got a park, 4 tall buildings built in the 20s. And Lexington Avenue is bordering on one side, and Lexington Avenue was like the time traveling street. I mean, it was still, especially close to 16th Street, where the let's see what Google says about this. What hotel is in the most southern part of Lexington Avenue in New York City, where it starts?
Here is information from Wikipedia.
Lexington Avenue, often colloquially advertised as Lex, is an avenue on each side of the borough, Manhattan, New York City, that carries southbound one-way traffic from East 131st Street to Gramercy Park. That's what I'm looking for. East of 21st Street. And that's exactly where my Aunt Gracie's apartment place was. So Lexington Avenue was here, Park Avenue was here. There was a really nice hotel, like Gramercy Park Hotel, I think. Yeah, that sounds reason. And you just walked across the street and there were steps that went up to Tudor City. Anyway, she had this amazing hole-in-the-wall little apartment. She had a Murphy bed, a really beautiful king-size bed that came out of the wall. She had a kitchen. She pushed a button, and it would come out of the wall. And there was a refrigerator, electric hot top stove, a little oven, and there was this whole wall of built-in shelves and a really deep closet. And on the other side was the bathroom. And the hallway had another like little room, right? That little room had a window that looked out to the United Nations, and the window of where her Murphy bed was looked out towards Gramercy Park and Lexington Avenue, and it was just totally amazing, right? Aunt Gracie was my mom's best friend. They were both at Roosevelt Hospital together and ran the place. And then my Aunt Gracie got a job. She kind of the man who Mr. Macy had a shiny mind. Both my mom and my Aunt Grace were like hot to trot, party girls, right? All these rich men were always up their butt. And my Aunt Gracie was like my Auntie Mame. And she was all of our Auntie Mames. Well, I was the one who hung out with her, stayed at her place. The little room she had was just the right size for me. She had a little bed for me there. And she always said, when I die, because it was a rent control apartment, she was paying $7 a month for that apartment in the 1970s. And when she died, I was in Ireland, and she said, I'm going to put this in your name. It'll always be yours. You'll always have a place, $7 a month. My mom, because she was the, power of attorney of my Aunt Gracie, when she died, she basically gave the building back to the real estate folk who were turning all those apartments into condos. And she could have turned it into a condo and then, put the money so I could have a stipend for the rest of my life. No, she just said, here, take it back. And I said, here, fine, good, sign this paper, right? And my parents did that to me all the time. And so on my deathbed, I asked my mom, so why? And she said, well, and I asked her, from the beginning, when she sent me up to the seminary, she said, oh, you wanted to be a priest. I said, what are you kidding me? I was the dude, I had my posse, everything. I'm going to go to high school and, was going to be the dude. And I'm sent to a all-male seminary of pathological pedophiles. Really? I really wanted to go there, eh? But it was kismet almost, because if I hadn't gone through that, I was, up until then, I was this naive, innocent babe in the woods that I still am. I still am. I trust everyone, but I've learned to read people like a book. So I trust them, but I look at them and go, okay, I'll either get out of the way, interact, see what the best I can do, right? And by being put so right in the way of the rushing train of the violence of what the Roman Catholic Empire is, it saved me a lot of trouble. My poor brothers and sisters are too. My sisters totally are like, oh, Jesus, save me. Kind of like a cross between that cartoon, Mr. Wizard, and he had that guy who was always with him, who always got, because there were time travels, they'd always get into trouble and go, help me, Mr. Wizard. That's how people look at Jesus Christ and God. It's like, Mr. Wizard, it's totally transactional. Please, please, please help me. And every time I do that, I don't realize that they are performing a satanic ceremony. Right? Because when you're transactional, the only person who's going to answer is the devil. And that is the Holy Roman Empire. Right? And it's every empire. It's the empire that we are right now. And we are collapsing faster than any other empire ever did. And that's why we are spending more money on our Imperial Guard than anyone ever has. I mean, Russia, China, come on, they're not a threat. Russia spends $60 billion. We spent $700, and this year, Biden popped on another $80 billion onto the $700 billion. And there's a guy who thinks, he's the perfect kind of poster child for the woke progressive liberal, which means he feels guilty about being a white male that lives a life of privilege. He never really has to work, right? He's going, I work so hard every day. I moved this rock here, that rock there. I went to Israel in 1978, and I caused peace there. And really, and I'm not talking about John, but this guy is just like John. Now, the major thing, my grandma had 28 rules, right? One of them was, and there are a number, I have my own 3 rules, right? And then of the 28, every one of them, yeah, that's a good one, I'm going to do that. And the one I mostly live by, of her 28, is to live like a millionaire but not be one. So, I do that. The other one, she said that's quite good, and that guy, Jordan, he has his own list. And what's interesting, a number of ones that are on his list are the ones my grandma had. And she started hers like in the 1890s, so I think she's ahead of Jordan. But they both follow the same dynamic that Jordan was talking about, was to serve love's co-creation. You do that to your best. Be your best. Not try. Be your best. Do your best. You're a moron, so you can't be perfect, but you can do your best. And if you do that, you have a meaningful life, right? When you are serving love's co-creation, when you're there to be there for the other, right? Not yourself. Now, I do that all the time. And Well, you go out and talk to people and blah, 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 and you're so comfortable. And you're trying to tell me that you're so cool. No. John, I want to be famous and rich and loved. Well, you're not going to be that unless, why are celebrities, famous and loved? Because through their own, who they are, they project this love and service to everyone who's, those musicians who play, Their music serves to enlighten and free people in their own way. I mean, we all have our favorites, Alexa, play Joni Mitchell.
Here's some music by Joni Mitchell on Amazon Music.
Now, this girl like this song. Alexa, increase volume. Child to wonder, a child came out to wonder. Up there, I caught a dragonfly. Yep, that's me. Full on love thunder, tearful when the sky is full of thunder. Oh, cheerful. Cheerful at the falling of a star. Seasons, they go round and round. The pony goes up and down. Alexa, stop. So when my grandma lived, there was this park, and they had a merry-go-round with the ponies going up and down. I mean, it was not a carnival. It was part of the New York City park system. I don't know if they still have it, but it was the best of things. And it was always running. There was always a guy there who watched after it, and he had a little thing where you could get cotton candy and popcorn, caramel popcorn. And there was nothing else, but it was a park. And, they had nice, place to have a picnic lunch, and they had a little pond that you could put your little sailboat in, because there was a point where people had model sailboats and would run them around ponds. There is in Central Park, there's a big sailboat pond, and that's where Tesla showed the War Department that he invented artificial intelligence in the 1890s, early, like 93. And he put this bathtub-like looking thing into the water. He had a little control thing, and this is way before radio. He pushed a button, and the thing went, and it went back and forth and back and forth. And then he put into the water little big models of like warships, and puts a little button on it, so a little propeller started moving slowly. So the thing didn't go real fast, and so he had 3 or 4 of them, and he had pushed this other button, and the bathtub was went on automatic, and it went around and came up, and then hit one of the model boats with a death ray, blew it up, and he blew up all of them. He said, with 1,100 of these along our coast, east and west, we would never have to be worried about being attacked or invaded, and we could have peace, and we wouldn't have to spend any money on war. We would be totally protected, and we wouldn't have to spend any money on war. And our allies, we could give these to our allies, and they wouldn't have to spend any money on war. And the admirals and the generals looked at this and said, well, that's nice. We'll get back to you, because they were all about war. That's why, they went, they were honest anyway, because they called themselves the War Department. And then in 1947, just to hide things in plain sight, they called it the Defense Department. And we are now, Mr. Obama, put us on, why do we have land-based ICBMs? There's no reason. They are a target in the ground. They make, and they're sprinkled all around the country, not just out in the West, all around the country. They have facilities in every state that is a target for the Russians or the Chinese to hit. We got rid of them. They'd have no reason to blow it up and then spread radioactivity all over the place, right? But we put our own people in harm by putting in an ICBM. I mean, we have these sea-based ballistic missiles and submarines that are under the water. You can't ever find them. They're hiding, moving around. That right there is a deterrent, But the Air Force isn't, their bomber thing is like pretty much obsolete, no matter how fast a bomber can go. Like the XB-70 and the B-58 Hustler. Both were supersonic bombers in the 50s, right? And the XB-70 was built basically not to be a bomber, but to carry. The whole back of it is flat. And the Air Force put, the space shuttle in the 50s on the back of that thing, and the XB-70 would lift it off, get it up to about 70 to 100,000 feet, and then drop the space shuttle off. And that way it didn't need those big solid boosters and all the rest, right? It could go into Earth orbit and do its thing. And it did. Did it for 20 years, right? And then we built the Apollo to lift. The Apollo could lift over 200 tons into high Earth orbit. 200 tons, 200 tons is like, lifting a destroyer into space, right? And I don't know if you guys paid attention to UFO history and terminology and mythology, but there was a point when a good deal of the flying saucers, they called them cigar-shaped. And what were they? They were the Polaris-class submarine that had anti-gravitational generators on it, and so it could go into space. And what better thing that could go into space but a device that's designed to go down to 1,000 feet in the ocean, where the pressure on it is like 1 million pounds per square inch. Where in space, it's not really that big a deal, but it's still a vacuum, and a vacuum is a lot easier to take than, and it's really cold down there. So that submarine was designed to, be able to hang out in the seabed for 6 months, right? Has a nuclear reactor in it, right? Or a power source that's very powerful and lasts a long time. To my mind, it's more a zero-point energy generator than a nuclear reactor, because a nuclear reactor takes a ton of water to go over its core to keep it cool from melting down, from doing a 3 Mile Island or do a Fukushima, look at Fukushima. The reason why those reactors blew up wasn't nuclear. The big tidal wave came in, and these guys were morons. The smart guys said, we should put our generators on top of the building. They said, oh, that costs too much money. We'll just put it here in the parking lot. Well, that big tsunami wiped out the backup generators. No more juice to cool the core. Core heats up. The billion gallons of water that are in there anyway turns into what? Bleaches, bang, straight into hydrogen and oxygen. Explosive materials. One little spark, boom-o. And those 4 buildings, one after another, boom-o, 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 showing the stupidity of building a high-pressure water reactor. Now, you don't have those on board a nuclear submarine. You have some other force, because you'd have to have billions of gallons of superheated water going over that core. Well, you're out in the ocean, no problem. Suck it in this side, blow it out that side. But then all you need is a little satellite in space with a thermal infrared sensor. Oh, look at that gigantic plume. Oh, it's, look there in the North Pole. The water is like, 20,000 degrees below zero. And oh, look, there's this plume of superheated water about 20,000 degrees hot. So nuclear submarines. So that's why there is no nuclear power on nuclear submarines. And they're also built in a place in Groton, Connecticut called the Electric Boat Company, not the nuclear powered boat company. I could go on, but I won't. But that is why, we're spending all this money because, General Dynamic, we have, good old, General Ike. Before he left, like hours before Jack Kennedy was sworn in, he goes on TV and gives a speech about the military-industrial complex and watch out for it. And, every aircraft carrier, you could build 20 hospitals and 100 schools. This was going to be the end of us. And Jack Kennedy comes in, and what does he do? He tripled down on the defense budget, right? So our government, all our institutions, are basically, as our friend Jordan said, are, criminally insane and evil to a satanic point, right? And if you buy into it, why do you think I live out in the woods eating bark, And I bought into it. I worked for those guys for 30 years, but I thought I was, I'm an itinerant scholar. I'm not, when they wanted me to sign the book and take the oath, I said, no, I'll do this other thing for you, but I'm not doing that. Right? So they allowed me to do it because they needed me, and they paid me nice, and they let me do it my way. And I learned and experienced and met people and had a great life, right? But I still was part of that institution, right? And many people, the guy who wrote, I was hitman for the bankers, very good book, very, tells it like it is, but he wrote it when he was in his 60s. Well, I'm writing my novels. I mean, there's not very much difference from us. Where a guy named Gary Allen, when, I was at the CFR and we were with Dr. Quigley, he wrote that at the beginning of his career, right? Now, I could, people just thought I was a kind of interesting artist electrician. And that was my, my cover for myself. I was bred to be, literally bred, like, heifer, to be a rocket scientist for the Pope. But I rebelled against that. Boy, did I ever rebel against that. And like I was saying, my parents, for the first, 18 years, tried to put me in, everyone said, oh, boy, this guy's the kid's. We need to put him like he's going to be a jewel. We got to just sharpen him up, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, they put me in all those things. And at some points, it was very dangerous for my existence, like in first grade when that nun tried to kill me. And then, in freshman year in high school when that Jesuit priest tried to kill me. It's interesting. I have a cardinal as a godfather, or had. He's, no longer with us. And, and I've definitely been taken off, the books of, where you always have your perpetual, excuse me, but this table is reserved for Al Bob, In the Catholic Church, they've taken my name off the roster. But they're still up, if we ever need them, we know we can call them. All we have to do is promise him this, that, and the other thing, and he'll probably do it. And that's why I'm still allowed to do this, but I don't get too much coverage. And John goes, well, if you only did this, would you? I said, well, John, why don't you help me? I don't know how. Of course, he's got it wired up, so every time I do a show, it goes onto his channel. Because everybody's watching, it came from me. Well, really, the only reason they came here is because the only reason they're watching you is because I was on your channel. And that is the amazing, we're like Abbott and Costello, Stan, Laurel, Hardy, and, Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. It's time for the version of that in the 21st century. And I don't know anybody who's better than him and I, except for our good friend JP. Awakening with JP, right? He is like Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy in one guy, right? He is like, the guy who is the cowboy roper, comedian, satirist of the 1930s and 40s who died while he posted an airplane crash. Will Rogers, you know. And so, and I don't quite fit any of those. I'm almost any of them, but I'm your Sensei L. Bob here. Okay, let's see what you guys are saying here. Esoteric. Wait. Some portable speakers and play healing frequencies and put. Yeah, well, if you saw that one day he got really upset and I started going, praise Jesus, and then said the Lord's Prayer, the demon ran right out of him. So, hey there, Tool. Howdy. When Season says, I'm probably the only viewer that knows Help Me, Mr. Wizard. That was before I was born. Yeah. I was like in The Simpsons. They have a scene where Homer goes. His mom comes and she was a hippie girl and she left just because the FBI was out for her, so she wanted to protect Homer. So she left him with the curmudgeonly grandpa, right? And that's really why, because she was a free spirit. So anyway, in that one, and she's talking about Homer. And there's a picture of Homer, and he's like that far from the TV screen, right? And he's in this little room, and he's got this TV right in front of him, and right behind him is like being etched because the electron gun is doing this. So it's like X-raying Homer. And so when, Grandpa dies and his mom shows up, she's like going through the old house, and this is Homer, and she's got Lisa and Bart with her, and she's telling stories about their dad, Homer, and she goes, and this is Homer's room, and we got him his own TV, and there's a picture of, you can see that he had no bed, he just slept on the floor, and he sat like this watching TV, and when they go into the room, there's a shadow etched where Homer sat in front of the TV on the wall behind him. That was me. And that was our generation. I'm of Homer's generation. And when my first wife, Donna Ann McAdams, go Google her, go find her website. I don't know if she's on Facebook. You could tell her to go watch her ex, but she may not. So, but when I went to see her home, there's this little house in Islip, Long Island, and and her father's really cool, really interesting guy. Mom is like the size of a whale and just on the couch eating bonbons, watching TV. Two sons and her. There were 3 kids. 2 sons are like Beavis and Butthead. One of them is a little smarter, a little nicer, Stevie. I can't even remember the other one. And her father was really an amazing guy, amazing athlete, brilliant guy. He worked for Sperry Rand, and they were, because he didn't have a college degree, and he was about to go up to college he was going to go to MIT, but they drafted him and put him in a Nike Zeus missile range thing, figuring out algorithm before they had computers. He was doing the shit in his head. And so Sperry, that made that shit, after he said, well, we got a job for you. Well, when they put him to work, they paid him $125, and that was, he was making $125 in 1974, right? Where when he died about 3 years later, he basically they had to replace him with like 5 PhDs, right? And that is the whole essence. I mean, around me, I see all of these soap operas going on, just expressing what's going on in our world, and has been since Babylon and before, right? Before Babylon, Mesopotamia, Syria, not Syria, but it starts with an S. And then Lemuria, the Phoenicians, Atlantis, and beyond, right? And what do you want to know? What was beyond Atlantis? What happened before Atlantis? just watch George Lucas's movies. That's why they're so popular. Because he sat in front of Joseph Campbell for a year and just took notes. And Joseph Campbell told him that whole friggin' story, right? And how I know this is that I studied with Joseph Campbell, and he told me that whole friggin' story, right? Much better than the movie, but the movie's pretty good. And so all of that you saw, the Empire, all that happened in our solar system, not across, in a galaxy far, far away. No, right here at home, right? That's why it resonates with us, because it happened, and we're in our DNA. We're going, oh my God, that's what happened back, because we're all reincarnated over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? But there are a few of us who realize, all of us get these opportunities to change the storyline, right? Most of them, John's a great example. He's great. From whatever his past life was to now, he's got the karma to deal with it. He probably was abandoned as a child in his past life. And so what does he do? He's abandoning his children in this present life, right? And he would, scream at me and say, no, I live for my children. Then why aren't you with them for the last 10 years, when they were growing up, when they really needed you? Now they're teenagers. The son wants to come be with it. No, I can't have him. All I can have is, I want my wife back. I want a little baby girl. They're all mine. No, sorry, that's not really true. And they never were, Our parents didn't own us. They treated us like we were property, And, but that's just their problem. That's just they've been, we're all dipped, how they dipped animals, right? We're all dipped in the sociopathic presence, right? But some of us, for some reason or not, doesn't really take. And it's usually a myriad of, like to mine, what happened to me, at 6 months, I crawled over to the electric socket, stuck a knife into the hot side and got, but I wasn't grounded. So I didn't get, yow! I just got, and that started talking to me. How you doing? How good to see you. Glad you hooked up. You're now online, right? And then my sister came in, because I was spitting sparks out of my mouth. My mom came running over. She leaned on the radiator to kneel down to pick me up and pull me out of the thing. And she's the one who got bang. I don't know if any of you fooled around with, cow electric fences, super high voltage, no amperage. You're not going to get, cooked, but you'll get a bang, a jolt, right? If you're, like the cows, they're like, got their hooves, very strong conductors. They're standing there pissing on themselves. And then they take their tongue and touch the electric fence and wow, they get away from that sucker. And then when we were kids, these things, we would be wearing our kicks and one person would be the brave one to grab it, usually me. And I just, blah, 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 oh, hey, you're back again. Hey, how you doing? And, then someone would grab me, then someone would grab me. And then when someone would come along that wasn't wearing rubber shoes and wasn't part of our gang, that person would just, hey, come over here and touch them. And they would get the jolt and fly across the playground. I don't know why they did this, but our playground, a back corner of it, this guy had an electric fence. He had some animals and, kids would go play with them. And so the animals would come over to them, the kids would give them the sandwich. So he didn't want that. So he had electric fence there to keep the kids and the animals separate. And we would go over there and do this thing where I would grab it. Somebody grab me, somebody grab me, somebody grab, down. And then bully or somebody would come over and that person would touch them and electrocute them. And so I did that when I was 6 months old. And it threw my mom across the living room. She smashed in the coffee table, broke her arm. And they started putting the crib upside down on me so I couldn't get out. I was like incarcerated. And my Uncle Steve came over and my grandma, and he made that crib for me because when I showed up from the hospital and nearly died, after my mom came home 3 weeks later, I could make it back, and the doctor said, now, told my mom that he has to breastfeed. We've been breastfeeding him with a wet nurse, but he needs it for your nutrition. No, Mom, I'm just threw the box of formula into the crib and had me make it myself. And they didn't have me in a crib. They had, when they brought me home, they kept me outside in a sunroom because my parents didn't want me in their room crying or, because all the other kids were, not me. I was just, and I was right there, right underneath the boiler. Every time it was a coal boiler. Every time it turned over, it would like this big cloud of cyanide and zinc and lead and every other toxic mineral from that coal would come up into that smoke room and fill it up, right? And then it would be warmish, so I would be kind of warmish. And before my parents, so I was in that, and then I was freezing, and I was in they put me in a dresser drawer that was painted with lead paint. I mean, it's amazing. But my Uncle Steve came over, like 2 or 3 weeks after, because he's one of my other godfathers, who always took care of me, always watched out for me. And so he came over, and he was the, I don't want to say janitor, he was the engineer of LaGuardia. And LaGuardia is what was named after a politician, and then Kennedy got whacked, and they changed LaGuardia to Kennedy. Anyway, he was the head guy. He fixed everything. He was in charge of fixing everything. He was a real engineer. He understood electronics and electricity and drainage and sewage and you name it, he could do it. So he brought his plumbers over there. He replaced the boiler and put a real gigantic radiator along that glass wall of that sunroom and turned, that thing from Eskimo land into a Caribbean hotspot, right? And the steam would come up, cover all the glass windows, and it would be so cold outside, glass windows would turn to ice. And the sunlight would come through, and it would shine rainbows everywhere. So as a little baby, I can remember this. So I only stayed in the dresser drawer for, I don't know, a week, if that. He came over, he cleaned that whole, scrubbed that whole thing up. He took that baby. My Aunt Wynn, his wife, came, who was my mom's best friend, and my Uncle Steve was an older guy when my dad was in high school. So he's a friend of mine, and his father was an engineer, and they weren't rich like all the other Freeporters of the movie star level, but they were well-to-do, and they always had a good job. Like Uncle Steve, he had a really good job, and his father had a really good job. And so in high school, he was the smartest one. He went on to NYU and on to Columbia, got engineering degrees, went to Cornell. Really smart guy. World War II, he was, doing stuff, he didn't have to have a gun. They had him doing other things, right? And the Manhattan Project was just the most advertised of the technology jumps that occurred. And that whole time, because, the war started in 1939, we didn't get involved until 1942, 1941. And, December 1941. And so we were selling stuff to the Nazis, and even while we were at war with them, Prescott Bush was selling oil and ball bearings to the Nazis. That was used to shoot down our boys in bombers. So anyway, that's America, right? So I've been around that cabal my whole friggin' life. And I've been part of it, but never part of it. In it, but not in it, right? So 6 months, so my Uncle Steve comes over, puts a big radiator there, he makes an amazing cedar, crib for me that I still love the smell of cedar today. And that more or less saved my life, and then I stuck the knife in the electric socket, spat, my mom flew across the room, and smashed into the coffee table, breaking her arm. And she was, I can't take it. And she was already self-medicating with tobacco and alcohol. And she had 6 other kids to, scream at. And so my grandma said, I'm just taking this one. So Uncle Steve his boys picked up the cedar, crib. And my grandma took me to her house, right, in the city. And I grew up there. And she also had a house in Long Island. So I had 2 places, Harlem and Long Island. But we were mostly in Harlem. We stayed, my grandma would say, well, we're only about 20, 30 miles from your parents. That's close enough. We just have to get on the train to see them, but we don't want to see them. So that's, this first 6 years of my life of just being with my grandma and then totally surrounded by this amazing community and culture of Harlem. That's when the Harlem Renaissance was from the 20s, really from the 1890s to the 1960s. And, the real amazingness of them was before, not really, all that period, that was a Renaissance. But when I was there, you could tell things were, because, good old Robert Moses destroyed the economic center of Harlem by putting the Brooklyn Queens Expressway in, right? Because it knocked off certain avenues to get in there, and like the South Bronx, which was where a lot of the Black and Hispanic and Cubano and Caribbean folk lived kind of together, and Chinese too, and they all had businesses and they were building an economic juggernaut there. And he just came right through with bulldozers and took, split neighborhoods apart and didn't build bridges. And there'd be avenues. And the white people, they did it too in Queens, but they at least got bridges across this island. The Black folk, not so much. And that's when they started to redline areas. So people had businesses, and Black men, started buying those buildings from the old white guys. And they got redlined, so they couldn't borrow any money to fix it up or do anything or amortize their property to build wealth. And so that's why, and so all the businesses that were there, again, when you have a business, like when I had real businesses, I would do a job, get money, put it in the bank, right? And the bank could see that, this guy's doing pretty good. So, hey, you need to borrow so much, we'll give you a business loan, which was really great because certain times you didn't have all the money. Like when you start a job, you sometimes have to drop thousands of dollars worth of materials into a job before they really give you a chunk of change now, a lot of guys wouldn't, they'd get their first check in the middle. I would get the biggest check up front. You want me to do this? I want this much money up front before I start, period. So I can flow. And the way I worked, I didn't and so other electricians and other people of the trades, they'd have to do 5, 10 jobs at once, really juggle shit, right? And if something falls apart in one of them and you drop all the plates, there goes your business. Me, I did one job at a time. Yes, they were nice big jobs. They were, pretty good. And I still had my service work. I fixed things, it was left over from Grandpa's stall. I still picked up his stuff. Because as he got really old, he couldn't even walk around and do that anymore. I mean, he didn't do it. He'd have a couple of guys, but couldn't even do that. So I just picked up that work, and ran it out of their business. It was like went through their business, and I get a check from them, being a subcontractor basically. So I would do that. I had a couple people working for me. We'd be doing the big job. I'd have 1 or 2 I trained really well who could do it when I wasn't there. And there'd be 2 or 3 other new apprentices. We always had 2 because I'd always be grabbing some. Hey kid, you don't want to sell drugs. Here, how much you getting to run this package across the street? $10. I'll pay you $10 an hour. For every day for 40 hours a week. If you do good, the work, and if you don't have a place to stay, I got a place for you to stay. You need something to eat, I'll feed you. I did that to 128 kids who would have ended up dead or in jail. And I just gave them the way to get off that, because I didn't just pick anybody. I saw somebody who would take advantage, who would step up, who would do their best. That was a person. No one ever yelled at them. No one picked on them. My journeymen who knew what they were doing. Most of them were journey women, because women were the only apprentices I really had where, I wasn't gender specific on the kids I pulled off the street. And I would get them to a place. Not all of them became electricians. A number of them, because I worked with so many other trades, they had a propensity. I would teach them how to be a good worker, how to be responsible, how to be, take and be responsible, right? And to do their best. And that was the best skill I could teach them. And learning about electricity was good, but many of them, about 6 of them, went off to be plumbers and got their licenses, because I hooked them up with real good plumbers who, ferried them into that, because that's what those guys wanted to do. And other people wanted to be other things, artists, actors, a number of them. There's, what's her name? She's a Hispanic looking woman. And she starred, her first big movie was Alexander, where she played one of the princesses that he conquered. And that was a pretty wild scene. The first night they were together, the wrestling match. And she got that because I was telling her about my first wife, and how my first wife wanted to always scream and yell before we had sex, and that I didn't want to do that. So we would wrestle. So that scene in that movie of Alexander with the English guy, that's her. And she also was in Men in Black, where she, the cockroach was looking for the galaxy that was around the cat's neck. And she kind of picks up the cat and takes after Iona gets, skewered by the cockroach. And she's working in a pizza shop, right? And so not the cockroach, the woman who was, had all the snakes on her, and the two-headed moron. She was in that, Men in Black. And she was also in the Runaway Train with, what's his name? A black actor. He's the engineer. And the guy who played Captain Kirk was the younger, fireman. And she's on the radio, the control. That girl. She was in one of our abandoned building. And whenever she'd go on, Jimmy Kimmel or any of those guys to talk about her movie, she would talk about being homeless and being, and we didn't squat. We were homesteaders, and that's what we were. We used the Homestead Act of 1876. Took over the buildings legally because I was a master electrician. I had connections in the building department. I got, legal electricity to all those apartments. When you have an electric bill, that is a platinum standard of you live there, right? So all those 500 families who would have gotten thrown out by the police couldn't. We had good lawyers. So we won every battle, but the city gave us just inordinate. I mean, they would just, once they couldn't arrest us, the cops just kicked in the door and beat the crap out of everyone. Period. Because they represent money. The police aren't there to protect you. They're there to protect money. If you've ever seen the movie Gangs of New York, there's a great scene in the beginning. They zoom in, a crane shot goes into the Five Corners, which is the Lower East Side, right? Over near Pearl Street. And they have this guy who's high on top of this hill of garbage. He's got the nicest house there, and he's screaming and yelling. And he's the last of the Dutch folk who are still there, still in control, right? And there are Irish people who are like working and toting that barge, lift that bale. And they're just looking at him and shaking their heads and going on and making their penny a day. And then you see all this brouhaha, the Irish people just doing stuff. And then you go into this guy where Daniel Day-Lewis is playing the butcher. And he's going on about how the Irish are coming over in a boat. They're scum. He's there he's an American, and he's wrapped in an American flag, and he's cutting up meat and giving people meat, and that's how he buys people up. He's a butcher. But when you do something wrong, that meat, that spare ribs that he just gave grandma over there was really Bobby's, any who crossed him got cut up and turned into, what he was serving out of his butcher shop. So it goes on and on like that. And you see that the Irish, they were, the Civil War was going on. The Irish coming off the boat, they're just giving them uniforms and sending them into the maelstrom of war. And without any real training or anything. And it was showed physically that the South owned these black people like you own a tractor, so they had value. Well, the Irish coming off the boat were a cog in a machine that could be thrown away. And that was the real essence of this movie. And then it showed how the powerful, because the Dutch lived up there on Fifth Avenue, near Central Park, and it was like garden paradise. And, they would just, they would come down in their big carriages, and they had this thing called the liberal way. And so they'd step off their carriage, and when he, step in the street, they would step on this wooden platform and go up these steps, and it elevated, like 10 feet above everything in the five corners was this elevated platform that the rich, it was like watching the monkeys in the zoo, right? And there was this cop who was there, who was an Irish cop, and he said, help the ladies off, to step from the carriage onto the platform, up the steps. And, guy who came out who was like Carnegie, he goes, "Oh, sir, let me show you something. Do you have your watch?" And the guy pulls out this like gold watch. And the man says, "I'm going to place it right here on the fence, right here on this nice flat space. It's not going to get blown off, won't end up in the mud." And the woman says, "But those people will steal it." And he goes, "No, they won't, because I am the law here, and I am protecting this watch. And they know, even if they steal it, and I don't see them steal it, and when you come back from your tour and the watch is gone, I will know who, I will find out who took it. I will punish them severely, and I will have your watch back to you before the end of the day. So your watch won't even be taken, because that person will not only be killed, but his family will be killed. His children will be killed. Their dog will be killed. And I will hand them over to the butcher, who will chop them up and then serve them to all the people here." And that's how come we know how the power structure rules right there. Bingo, bango, right there, like within the first 5 minutes of the movie. And then it goes from there, right? And then it plays out into all the characters and what happens, right? And so all of that goes on, which just amplifies the first 5 minutes, right? And at the end, what happens, there are these gangs that are going to come at each other, right? But it's what it is, and you get a sense of this because all these Irish guys, you're always in the background, you see these boats coming in, the Irish guys coming off the boat, and they're not even getting to see their family. They're just being handed the uniform and put like in chains to be marched off down south to go against the rebels, right? And so what happens is the gangs are the Irishmen who don't want to die in that war, and the guys who are the criminals, second generation Irish guys, cutting up people, supporting the military-industrial complex. And this movie was made kind of during the Vietnam War. So that was pretty interesting. So go watch that movie, Gangs of New York, right? With that context, look for those little things I just pointed out. And it's still that way, still today, right? And that's why it's collapsing, because it's unsustainable, right? And they are hoping that AI and, that we will all embrace living in, what was that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger was the robot? That's the world they want us to live in. And they want to push us all into being a robot, transhumanist, and the rest of us will die. So go watch Zardoz. Has any of you, I've been talking about Zardoz for the last 3 years. Has anyone seen that movie? Let's see. Hello, Mr. Wizard. How many people? Oh, there's only one person left. An hour and 10 minutes. 3 thumbs up. Anthony. What? Anthony, did you ever see the movie Zardos? Did you ever see the movie Gangs of New York? If you haven't, put them on, I'm sure you can see them. I haven't. Well, part of, your degree here at the University of Al Bob, you have to go see those movies. Yeah, you don't have to go to the movie theater. Just, see some platform that has them. I bet you YouTube has them. YouTube would definitely have, if not the whole movie, everything about the movie, good chunks of the movie, all the above about the movie. I might start putting that in John says I need to put something in my something to get more people to watch. I've been watching Boardwalk. So, the guy who plays the heavy in that movie, that TV, Boardwalk, what's his name? Genjemi or something like that. He's a good buddy of mine. He was a fireman in New York, and I did this TV show called Potato Wolf. And he saw the one I did with my girlfriend who was teaching women martial arts, and she would beat men up, in her underwear. And, really beat them up. Close. Some of them had to be taken to the hospital. And we had them, I got my lawyer to write a severe contract where they could not sue us, could not go, and it was like mentioned, you will experience bodily harm. You will, may lose an eye. you may lose an organ. So, when you sign this, you are signing your life away, period. That's it. Now, you may get the better of this little honey, and yeah, you could beat the crap out of her, but we don't think that's going to happen. So if you really want to do this, right? So anyway, he showed up. I was watching Boardwalk. So who's the guy who's the star of that? He was this fireman. He got his theater career at doing TV shows with us, right? And you should go see if you can, pull up, Potato Wolf, right? And, collaborative arts project. And that was our umbrella that funded all these things that we did. And so anyway, he came and he just loved theater. And he said to me, so I'm a fireman and I've gotten hurt and I'm on, leave for like 6 months. I can get around, but I can't do firework anymore. I don't know if I want to do firework anymore. And they said, well, you could be an inspector or you could be, a trainer, a fireman. And he goes, I only did it because all my brothers and sisters and father and grandfather were firemen. That's how it goes. And they pay you pretty good and you have a really good retirement. And I could retire. Let's see. Hey there, Jamie. And so I can't remember his name. As soon as someone says, oh, yeah, that's his name. Anyway, I sent him over to HB Studios, Herbert Berghoff and Uda Hagen, his two Swedish, film notorieties. Herbert was a director, producer. Uda was like a movie star, and they were in their 60s. And I went there. I was sent over there when I was working at Phil Maurice, and I worked for Bob Goddard. I was sent over there. They had a really beautiful building on Bank Street and 10th Street over in the West Village. And it was a beautiful building, but nothing worked. Light switches blew up in your hand, and they tried to have theater lights. No, it didn't work too good. So I cleaned up their mess in a few weeks, one summer. And then they said, oh, you need to be our technical director, at like 14. I said, sure. And that was one of my first digs away from home because it was a big building, like a school or a hospital, built like in the 18-somethings, right right on this corner where it got sun all the. It was just so beautiful, and they lived in the top floor of this building, right? And again, very nice. I had all this great furniture they brought over from Europe and all these knickknack stuff, and I had a lot of great stuff in that building, but no walls, no. I mean, they were not builders. They were not right. So I brought my buds in, and we kind of rearranged everything for them. And anyway, in the process of doing that, I made myself a nice little office. You want me the technical director here? I need my own shop, my own office. Oh, sure, fine, take whatever. So I took a big chunk of the basement that had right off of 10th Street. There was like a roll up garage thing, and it kind of went down there. And so I started getting. I had a buddy from I met through. I knew him from Cooper, but before that, I knew him from good old Adam Purple. He was an adept of Adam Purple's, and so his father was a policeman, and he was in charge of where they would tow cars. The pound for your car. And what the pound was downtown on the west side, just before the Holland Tunnel. There was this, one of these old places, a dock that was like almost a quarter mile long out into the Hudson, right? And and it was big. It was like, quarter mile long and about a football field wide. And man, you could stick in heavy things, and they covered it in asphalt, and you could easily put 1,000 or 2,000 cars there easily, right? And so they towed them in and put them there, and you'd have to come there, and the guy had the computer, and you'd have to pay your fine, and then you could get your car, right? But people who didn't come and get their car for some reason or another, this guy who was head of that had a LLC that he would buy all of those cars that no one got from the city for like a dime. And then it was a corner of this thing that he rented and made it a used car lot, and you would just come and buy a car. And he had the computer there, so he just would click it away, and you get a cardboard printed license plate and a sticker for your car. And since that kid, I knew him and I knew his father, and the kid was working there. He was like running the used car lot part of the thing, because his father couldn't per se do it. So he had his 16-year-old son, and everything in his name, and which he kept doing, right? Anyway, so I got to know those guys, and at 14, I got my first car, right? And I didn't have a driver's license. All I had was a title, no registration, title, the cardboard license plate, and the sticker, which they didn't have temporary. That was like good for a year. And I would drive that car around, and I would park it anyway. Double parking, forget it. I do quadruple parking, because it usually never cost me. I called them my $50 cars. I never spent more than $50 for a car, right? Sometimes less. They all ran. They were all good. And as long as I stayed in Manhattan, no harm, no foul. One time I was tripping, and I was driving this little Comet, and I was parked in a certain place, and I went to 6th Avenue, and instead of going uptown, I turned to go downtown, because I only wanted to go 2 blocks. And I didn't want it to go all around just to get 2 blocks over there. So I just went the wrong way up 6th, then went wrong way up the other avenue, and then went wrong way up the other street, and then parked in front of this place. And this policeman kind of walked up to me, and I'm tripping my brains out. And he said, son, did you notice me when you passed me on the corner up here? I said, no. Who are you? He goes, I'm a New York City policeman. I said, what are you? He goes, I'm a New York City policeman. Who are you? He goes, sir, are you, he stopped calling me son. He goes, sir, are you incapacitated? I said, well, I'm not drunk. And he just kind of looked at me and goes, sir, are you going someplace nearby? I said, oh, yeah, right here. He goes, sir, are you coming out of here, until 6 a.m.? I said, not not probably. No, I'm going to go up there and get laid and then fall asleep. And then I know I have to go to work by 7. He goes, well, that's good, because if your car is not going by 7, your vehicle will be, because we're going to tow it out of here. But I'm going to be good with you, because you drove very nicely and you broke every law there was, but you did it, you weren't swerving. You weren't like, it didn't look like you were a threat. I mean, there was no traffic. Yes, 4 a.m. No one's on these roads. I'm just going to give you a break. Now, if I was black or if I had said something that might have pissed him off, but he kind of realized it'd be so much, because he went, he had his little radio. He kind of called in my license plate number and saw that it was, purchased, 6 months ago at the thing. And he goes, do you have a title for this vehicle? Oh, yeah. Just because I always carry, yep, here's the title. And he goes, okay. You should get this car plated, insured. If I see you again, I'm just going to take the car. I'm just going to throw you out of the car and drive it away, right? So, because then I won't have to deal with the paper. I would have thrown you in jail, but the paperwork, we'd be working on it for the next day and a half. So no, if you're going to go up there and get laid, just go. Don't come back until you are sober and you get this car off the road. And don't come in my neighborhood ever again. I said, who are you? What are you? London Real interview is on with David Icke. And let's go. That's the one they took him off the air for. I mean, David is so cool. I love David. I had to hand it to Dave in that he just doesn't give up. Play London Real on YouTube Live right now. Let's see if it brings it up. Oh, there we go.
At the biggest live stream of a conversation in human history. Here we went deep on issues of economic totalitarianism, big tech censorship, and the upcoming vaccine agenda. We concluded the year by broadcasting Rose Ike 4 and finally Rose Ike 5 on location at the Isle of Wight near your home because you refused to wear a mask on public transport, and we respected that decision. Both episodes challenged the disproportionate response to the virus. They emphasized our sovereign right to our bodies and our minds. On a personal note, David, these were some of the most challenging times of my life, but also some of the most rewarding. During the 2020 lockdown, we never missed a single day of work here at London Real. We continue to broadcast 3 controversial and groundbreaking live stream episodes every single week from the leading doctors, scientists, economists, entrepreneurs, U.S. congressmen, Nobel Prize winners, and 4-star generals. In total, we produced 57 live stream episodes on our Digital Freedom platform. It's important to note that in 2020, other independent media platforms like the Joe Rogan Experience, the Tim Ferriss Show, and Tom Bilyeu's Impact Theory went completely silent. We heard nothing from them. In 2020, London Real was the single source of real, uncensored, long-form conversations in the world, and I'm proud of that fact to this day. But towards the end of the year, I started to wonder if broadcasting video was doing enough. I looked at my home city of London. I witnessed the devastation taking place economically, psychologically, and I could see the long-term damage that it would be in everyone's lives forever. David, I've got 2 sons. They're 4 and 5 years old, and I thought that 20 years from now, they would ask me this question. Daddy, what did you do during the great pandemic of 2020? Did you make another video, or did you do something about it? So on November 1st, 2020, I announced my plans to be the next mayor of London. And I spent 7 months traveling over 5,000 miles on my battle bus to every single one of London's 32 boroughs, talking to real people in real communities about real problems. We published a 50-page detailed manifesto showing how to safely get London back to work, use science protocols, solve knife crime, improve transport, and build housing. I was also famously banned from campaigning by 10 police officers who surrounded me in 5 police vans. All this was captured on a video that went viral. Needless to say, we were on the road the next day fighting for free and fair elections. David, on May 8th, I went to City Hall. I remember like it was yesterday. and I was told I would not be the next mayor of London. And we learned that politics would remain business as usual for now. At this point, David, I realized there was one freedom that maybe was the most important of all: financial freedom. So we began educating the world about money, on how to unplug from the corrupt, centralized financial system built by banks and governments that has exploited people for way too long. We began educating the world on cryptocurrency, decentralized finance, and blockchain. As a former banker of 15 years, I have inside knowledge on how people have been controlled and exploited via their money by these institutions for thousands of years, and I believe decentralized finance is the one thing that can save humanity. Before we start, I want to ask everyone again watching this to please take a few seconds, share this link now via the sidebar to any and all of your channels. Again, ask your friends and family to give us 15 minutes and they can decide. David,
Why don't you do that,
and
gang?
your perspective.
Who's left
Now,
on the
almost
chat?
2 years later,
Send that
on
out.
the events of 2020,
Go on your
and
other
how
device.
they shape our current reality of 2022.
Well, I have a phrase, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. If you don't know the outcome, i.e. where we're being taken, then daily events appear to be random. This is happening, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening. But when you know where we're being taken, then those apparently random events become very much connected. And you can see, far from being random, they are stepping stones towards that outcome. So, as I said in the first of these interviews in 2020, look at the potential at that time for transforming human society on the basis of the COVID hoax. It has been a massive example of something I dubbed back in the 90s, problem, reaction, solution. And there's another version of this, which is a no problem, reaction, solution. And what you do is you create a problem or the illusion of one, the perception of one. You tell the public through an unquestioning media, have we seen that in the last 2 years or not? The version of the problem you want them to believe. And you want them in a state of fear, in a state of anxiety, in a state of being open to the world being changed to deal with the alleged problem. And then, at that point, you who have covertly created the problem or the illusion of it, got that public reaction, basically do something, or we're open to a solution being suggested, you then offer the solutions to the problems you have yourselves created. And those solutions are the incessant centralization of power, the incessant deletion of freedom, and the imposition of ever-gathering fascism on the fine detail of people's lives. Now, that is not something that I was talking about in the wake of the COVID era. That was in my books, what I've just said, back in the 1990s. So when this card was played in early 2020, it started to motor, didn't it? Out of China. We can talk about why China. I could see immediately that this was if not a problem reaction solution, then a no problem reaction solution. I was open to either at the time. But the potential for global transformation of human society was so vast, it was obvious to me that this was no, again, random happening. Because, I've been doing this a long time. I'm in the 32nd year now. And, I've looked at this on many different levels, including the psychology of those behind it, what I call the global cult. We can get into that. And one thing I've seen very clearly over the decades is that, yes, some things kind of randomly happen in that sense. And this cult will think we can ride this wave to advance our agenda. But anything that is a opportunity to vastly advance that agenda is never random. It's always ordained or pre-planned, pre-prepared. So you started to see the evidence emerge of Event 201, the Gates Foundation, World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab simulation just weeks before they played what I say was another simulation, a simulation of a coronavirus pandemic. And if you look, and you can find it on the internet, at what was said and all that was contributed to that, it was preempting what actually happened. You can go back to a Rockefeller document in 2010 and see what happened in the COVID era described then. This was pre-planned. And so why? I said this in that first interview in March of 2020. The journey they want to take us to, or the journey they want to take us on, the outcome, which makes total sense of the last 2 years, is to create a society of total global control, 24/7 surveillance, and a structure that I call the Hunger Games society, in which you have a tiny, tiny few globally at the top of the pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid is basically the rest of the population in deprivation, in poverty, and dependency upon the few at the top. And if you want to control people, make them dependent on you. And this Hunger Games society, between those 2 points, the few and the many, I said they plan a vicious police, eventually police military state, to impose the will of the tiny few, the 1%, it's actually less, upon the population, and to stop the population challenging the 1%. And when you look at the last 2 years, that is precisely what has happened all over the world. You've seen decision-making, even taken out of the political level, really, to a few insiders, and not even elected politicians, but medical experts, they call them, scientists, psychologists overwhelmingly, have been driving this policy all over the world. And when you look at countries like Canada, Israel, Italy, Austria, that's now just announced mandatory imposition of this fake vaccination we can get into. Australia has been transformed from what they perceived was a free country into a fascist state. Extraordinary levels of tyranny.
Does it surprise you sometimes how quickly this had advanced in 2 years? You've been studying this for 30 years.
Well, this is a point, you see. The speed that it happened, and always is equal to the speed of the acquiescence of the population to the tyranny.
So they're testing, seeing the feedback, and if they can push it, they push it.
Well, I said to you, I think in one of these interviews, this technique, they push the gate. Okay. Any resistance? No. Walk through the gate. Next gate. Push that. Any resistance? No. And so it goes on. This is how the tyrannies happen, because fascism and tyranny is never imposed by the fascists and the tyrants. There's never enough of them. It's imposed by the population acquiescing to the tyranny. Look at the mathematics. I mean, one of the good things about the COVID era is that, and I said this in one of those early interviews, it's brought this out of the shadows and put it on public display. You know, people say, oh, you know, this is happening, that's happening. Well, it's always been happening, but you've not seen it because it's been done from the shadows. But what the COVID era has done is bring this global cult into the room where we can basically see it and see its techniques. And this gives us a fantastic opportunity, because now more and more people can see it, to rid this world of this manipulation once and for all. Because you don't address something you can't see and are not aware of. More and more people are now. The point I was talking about there, however, is this speed of acquiescence equals the speed of tyranny. Because look at the maths. We're closing in on 8 billion people in the world. And the core of the core of the core of this global cult, you get into a single room. Add all the other levels of this, add all the gophers in administration and all the agents of the inner core, add all the police forces, add all the military, and you're still looking at a tiny number of people to impose this compared with the population they are imposing it upon. And therefore, they have to divide and rule the population. So we're fighting among ourselves, and in that de-unified state, we're not looking up and seeing the strings attached to one group who's fighting this group. This group has the same strings with the same hands attached to them. We're being divided and ruled, so we don't come together in unity and deal with this. So throughout this 2 years, you have seen mercilessly employed the 4-letter word that is the whole foundation of human control and always has been: fear.
Fear.
Once you
Fear.
get people in
Fear.
fear,
Wake up.
they look outside of themselves for something that will protect them from what they fear. And so in the early weeks into the spring of 2020, the fear card was played. And the fear was based on the unknown. This virus had come out of China. We saw pictures of all these bloody people collapsing in the street. Anyone seen anyone collapse in the street anywhere else from the same bloody virus?
No, I remember those videos.
Right. So, what was that about? It was about terrifying the global population into acquiescence. And at that point, in the spring of 2020, people were thinking, what's going on? There's people collapsing in the street. There's this virus. Oh, my God. So when, in unison, the politicians, puppets, came out and said, lockdown is the only way, lockdown, social distancing, and all this stuff, people meekly went under house arrest. That's all it was, house arrest. I refused to. Because they feared, in effect, the unknown. And 2 things have happened since. One is that a particular group of people, no matter the scale of provable, repeating lies that they've been told and shown to be lies, no matter that, when the next lies are told, they believe them. And those people have gone deeper and deeper into the coma. They're the ones that just do what they're told without question. They hide, they put the face nappy on, they take whatever jabs they're told to have without even questioning what's in it.
And I've been surprised by what I thought were advanced, intelligent, open-minded people that have just completely scared and complied.
Yeah, and they did. So what you've got is three groups of people. Two of these groups have allowed this to unfold, and these two groups are responsible for every tyranny in human history. One is the group we're discussing. They do not question. They go into a state, and fear is part of the emotion that induces it. They go into an unconscious state where what comes in, this repetition, fear, 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 go home, save lives, oh, you'll kill Granny. And it becomes an unconscious action. People, I call them press enter people.
Press enter.
The data goes in, what the government says, and the press enter, and they just do it. Then there's the second group. Second group doesn't want to do it. There's loads and loads of people who have had this fake vaccine, not because they wanted it, but they thought it would allow them to go back to normal or save their job or whatever. I do understand that. But they don't want to do it, but they fear not doing it. So these are the two groups behind every tyranny in history. Those who do it without question, those that don't want to do it, but do it anyway because they fear not doing it. And that leaves group number 3, which, hallelujah, in this 2 years has got bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the group, and I call them renegade minds, that sees what's going on and will not cooperate with it. Right. While these two groups are responsible for every tyranny in history being imposed simply through their acquiescence to the few, this is the group that's ended every tyranny in history because they will not acquiesce to the few, and eventually the momentum reaches a point where the tyranny falls.
And that group is growing, becoming more educated, from what you can see.
Well, I hear people say, and I do completely understand it, why aren't more people waking up? And I think you should have been with me in 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, and so on. What is happening today is extraordinary. Because, people say you predicted this and it's happened, you predicted that and it's happened. And my response is, yeah, but that wasn't the idea. The idea was to alert enough people to stop it happening. But you knew all along that it had to get so bad and so in people's faces that they couldn't ignore it anymore. Because who wants to face this stuff? Who wants to turn their life attention to it? They want to bring their kids up. They want to look after their families. They want to have a good time. Of course they do. They don't want to do that. And if they have a getaway car in the mind where they feel they don't have to address that, like, oh yeah, it's just that Ike, it's just a theory, it's a conspiracy theory. Shut up. You don't know what he's talking about. No, never happened. But when it's here, and the COVID era has put it here, then you either do what the first two groups do, or you address it. Because you've got no choice, really. And what's happened, despite all the censorship, which has been hysterical, and it's not been hysterical censorship because of the power of this cult, it's been hysterical censorship because of the weakness of this cult and the weakness of its narrative. The only way its narrative, ludicrous, could be defended is if those that were unraveling it were silenced. But despite all that, the information still got out there. And people have got more and more streetwise about, A, what the agenda is, where the world's being taken, and crucially about the techniques that are used to take us there, and they're all psychological, because the few cannot control the many physically. Impossible. They want to do that by connecting the population to AI, so AI becomes the human mind, then they can do that. But up to that point, they can't. The only way the few can control the many, the vast many, is by controlling the perception of the many, which becomes the behavior of the many. And this is the stadium in which the whole damn conspiracy is played out. Human perception. You get human perception, you've got human behavior. What is collective human behavior? It's human society. Where does human perception come from? It comes from information received. So if you can control the information that people receive through censorship and through the education system, or laughably passes for it, and through all these sources of so-called information, you can impose that perception that suits you, which becomes the behavior, which becomes human society. So if we look at the what happened with so-called COVID, the perception was that there's a deadly virus and we're all in mortal danger. That perception led to people meekly going under house arrest without question. If you had a different perception, which is the one I had, then you thought, sod that, I'm not doing any of it. Because if you ask me to do moronic things and I do them, then I'm a freaking moron, and I'm not. So I didn't social distance. I didn't not go out because I was told I couldn't. I didn't wear a face nappy. I'll die first. I never even had that stupid bloody thing on your bloody head with your temperature. I won't do it. I will not play a part in my own enslavement and my children's enslavement. I will not do it. So I had a different perception. So my behavior was completely different. Why my perception was different? This is the stadium in which it's been played out. So what's happened in the last 2 years is the perceptions of vast and increasing numbers of people have changed. They have started to see the world is not controlled by the forces they thought that they were, like governments and prime ministers and presidents. And they've started to see the techniques of manipulation. They've started to see where we're being taken. And the result is that ever larger numbers of people are behaving differently because they're perceiving differently. And this is making it far, far harder for authority to sell its agenda. Because if you look at what's happened, particularly in England, where this rollback suddenly happened out of nowhere, in terms of, you will have noticed this, in terms of great numbers of people, that the authorities have lost them. They're not frightened anymore.
Right.
Not only are they not frightened anymore, they have started to suss what's been going on. You've been lying to us to make us frightened, so we'll do what you want us to do. And what you want us to do is nothing to do with health. It's about imposing this ever-gathering imposition of tyranny. And when you lose people in terms of fear, it's very difficult to get them back. And you know, it's great what's just been announced in England,
which is the rolling back of stringent measures.
Yeah.
It looks like a success against this.
Yeah.
It looks like people are getting their rights back.
Yeah.
And you're saying it because they couldn't push through that next gate, so they decided to relax it a little bit. But
well, that's part of it. Part of it is the pushback in England. Part of it is that about 100 of Boris Johnson's government's own backbench MPs have said we're not having it. And then the stuff comes out about parties at 10 Downing Street, right in the middle of a time when everyone else was locked down and told they couldn't, party or do anything like that. that's taken the moral authority away from any government imposition of restrictions. What do you mean? You ignored them. So this has been a package of things that has pushed back and led to where we are now. And I think there's something else in the background that we don't know about yet. Because if you remember, we were coming up to Christmas in England, and suddenly, right on cue, Omicron, right? Yeah. And they started, Omicron, you must be frightened of Omicron. Never worked like it had before. You lose the fear, you lose the people.
So this is a victory, or this is just a temporary occurrence where they wait till there's another event and a way to advance the agenda and the information.
Right.
Or is this something we can ride as the Renegade Minds to kind of get more people?
Yeah, two things to this. First of all, like I say, they were pushing towards restrictions as they were coming towards Christmas. Suddenly they announced they weren't going to do it at Christmas, maybe New Year. They went to New Year and they didn't do it. And then if you notice, all these kind of lunatics in the government SAGE scientific advisory groups, they started to go silent. It had all been, we need lockdown, we need social distancing, we need masks, we need all that stuff. And they've kind of rolled back, it's all gone quiet. Chris Whitty, are you still alive, by the way, the Chief Medical Officer? What's happened to you in the last few weeks? So something's gone on in the background. But, of course, we are always one more big scare from them justifying going back into it in England. And we shouldn't forget, while we, celebrate, and we should be celebrating, because, a lot of people in this country have worked very bloody hard in the last 2 years to push this back. You remember where we were in the spring of 2020. You went out on the streets, there's nobody there. I was out driving during lockdown, never saw another car. And so we've gone from that to where we are now, where people are saying, it's a load of rubbish, isn't it? Yes, it is. It always was. But let's not forget this. First of all, this is an agenda for the transformation of human society. So it's not going to go away. And they will have many other, weapons in their script to push this on. Some of them with health, some of them with finance, some of them with other things. And we should not forget that while we celebrate in England this announcement, and for how long, in Italy, in Australia, in Austria, in Canada, many parts of the US where the Democrats are in control, and countries around the world, Australia, fascism is full blown. I mean, how more fascist can you get than the announcement in Austria of mandatory fake vaccination? So we as a global family, I think, need to take the stand that while anyone is under this tyranny, then we're under this tyranny, because this is a global family. And, just because this is happening in England now doesn't mean it's always going to be like this, but we have an opportunity now in this country to draw the bloody line and say, okay, we've worked to pull this back, and we're not going to take it again. Don't come on with your fear anymore, because we've sussed you. We know that you get us in fear because then we do what you want. We're not going to go there anymore. You're not doing it to us. And if enough people just refuse to cooperate with what they're told to do, refuse to cooperate with their own enslavement, it's unenforceable. This is the frustrating thing. If anything's frustrated me in the last 2 years, it's when I've heard people say, what's the answer? Get yourself a calculator. Take those doing it from the population, and there's your answer. don't cooperate because they cannot enforce that. I mean, you take America. Something like 74, 75 million people are supposed to be voting for Trump. Not someone I support, by the way. Quite the opposite. But what if those 74, 75 million people had just refused to cooperate in 2020, 2021? Just refused to cooperate. Would have been unenforceable.
Yeah.
And this is why this second group that can see it but still cooperate with it, that's the pivotal group. Because what we're seeing is more and more people are moving from that group into the other one that says we're not having it.
Right. And those are the people we connected with in 2020 that were the ones that were questioning it. And I think they started to move into more of the we're not having it, as you would say, or the renegade mind group. It's been hard to watch Australia because typically it's been a big fan base for us and people that are always thinking forward, new ideas, and to watch it being locked down, it's unbelievable sometimes to watch it. And like you said, it's happening right here on our earth, and we're watching it happening in front of us.
Well, what's the one of the things that's really woken people up is exactly what you've just described. If you'd have said to people in the early weeks of 2020 that the world was going to be like it is at the turn of 2022, they'd have laughed at you. They would have said that's ridiculous. You know what they would have said? We would never let that happen, right? And then 2 years later, it's all happened. And what this has done for lots and lots of people, they've got them to a stage of basically all bets are off. If this is possible, what's happened? Anything's possible. And what I'm finding is that more and more people are becoming open, even to there's lots of them, far out things that I've said over the years. They're becoming more and more open to them because what has happened in the last 2 years is just extraordinary in terms of the transformation. And so it's opened a lot of minds up, and that's been a good thing. And this cult would have factored that in, but I don't think they reckon for quite the awakening that's happened.
Right. What does the next 12 months look like from a virus perspective, and what do we need to be aware of from data, from testing, from new variants? Maybe 12 months, 24 months, and then of course I want to talk about vaccines. But before we do that, what should we be aware of? What do you think is coming? Like you said, I speak to taxi drivers all the time, cab drivers, and they were asking me 3-4 months ago, do you think it's over? Do you think it's over? And I was thinking, you know what? Something around Christmas sounds like something that could happen. And then it all was written in front of us with this crazy Greek letter that sounded good called Omicron. And again, I was watching it almost played out like a play, like a Shakespearean play. Yeah. What should we be on the lookout for the next 12 months, 24 months? Or is this 10 years or the next 100 years where we will be used the virus as a fear?
No, the time scale is much shorter. They have a time scale to 2030 for absolute transformation of human society, including the widespread connection of the human brain to artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence becomes the human mind. So the time scale is very short. And so the script that's been unfolding since the COVID card was played, it does not end now, clearly. I mean, it's pushing on mandatory vaccinations and stuff for the first time in Austria. And in this script ongoing will be many, many other events, claims, and happenings that will be designed to push forward. I've just asked people to keep this in mind, to push forward towards this Hunger Games society. Remember that structure as these events unfold. Because if you look at lockdown, well, lockdown was nothing to do with health. lockdown was economic destruction of businesses that were not in the corporate network. This is why the great corporations, the cult-owned corporations, have increased their market share massively, while small business and medium business have gone under in enormous numbers through lockdown. Lockdown was part of the creation of that dependency of the population, because while you have independent business and independent employment, independent of the few at the top, the cult as I'll call them, then you do not have dependency, which equals control. But if you can destroy that independent business network and destroy that independent income, at the same time that you are taking jobs galore from people using AI and technology, then you are bringing people into a state of dependency upon the few. So you've lost your job and you lost your business, and oh yeah, your job's gone to AI. So how are you going to put food on the table? And this is where I've been writing about this for decades, and it's now being trialed all over the world. Not trial, it's being introduced. It's called the guaranteed income. And the guaranteed income will be a pittance, relatively, that will be given to people who have no other form of income, which is increasingly more and more people. But it will come with consequences. You get your guaranteed income, and by the way, if you don't take it, where else are you going to get anything, your money from? But only if you do what you're told. So what we're looking at is, if people want to see what this Hunger Games society is supposed to look like, then look to China, because China is the blueprint on which this global system, which the COVID era was designed to push on massively and has. China was the blueprint. And it might be worth that, because this will be part of where it goes from here. Just looking at the sequence of events that led us to where we are now in the West, and indeed the rest of the world. The Mao revolution in China was a cult revolution. Mao was the cult's guy. And the whole foundation of it was to create a closed society of utter tyranny, where when the tyranny in power said this is going to happen, there wasn't a debate, it just bloody happened, which meant that they could move real fast with this system. Whereas in the West, until the COVID card was played, there was some lip service to freedom, democracy, and debate, so everything could move slower in terms of moving to this dystopian system. So the idea was to incubate within China a system of mass control, not least based on AI and technology, which, when it was perfected, would be played out across the world and become the global system. So the idea, or the fact, that this COVID hoax, and we can get into why it's a hoax, came out of China makes perfect sense, because what has happened as a result of, quote, COVID, in the West and the rest of the world, it's become more and more and more like China.
And what is China? When you see China, what are the things that pop out as saying, look what they're doing here, here, and here? Because a lot of times we don't even know what's going on inside.
Okay, well, first of all, to understand this global cult and how it works, people need to realize it has no borders. We see China, and we see the American government, and the British government, the French government, but that's not how the cult sees it. The cult sees it as, this is our China government, this is our French government, this is our British government, this is our United States government, and they work as one unit. So, I mean, you specialize in the financial arena. So much has happened and decisions have been taken in the United States that have benefited the increasing power of China over the world economy. Why would American governments be making decisions that aid China? Because that's a cold government and that's a cold government. So the Chinese system that is coming into the West under the name vaccine passport is the social credit system. And this is all part of this post-Mao incubation of a global system in China. So what happens if people haven't come across it is there are millions of surveillance cameras in every Chinese city. And AI, and by the way, the AI cutting edge that we're told is not the AI cutting edge. It's just what we're told is the cutting edge. The AI system in China is tracking and logging and monitoring people in real time, 24/7. And it's logging whether you are behaving in ways that the government wants or whether it's in ways the government doesn't want. If it's the way the government wants, you get credits. If it's not, you have them taken away. And once you reach a point where you've lost enough credits, you can't fly, you can't go on a train, you can't basically operate in mainstream society. It's a system of total control. Now, as a result of the virus, and I keep doing that because we need to get into that. What is this virus? The result of that coming out of China, we now have these increasingly in country after country vaccine passports. Now, what are they saying? Not least in Austria now. They're saying if you don't do what the government tells you to do, i.e. have this fake vaccine, then you can't operate in mainstream society. You're excluded from society. Now, that's just what happens in China because it's the Chinese system going global, the cult Chinese system going global. And the plan is this, and this is another reason why a lot of people have moved into this camp of pushback, is they were told that you have the first 2 jabs and then you go back to normal. And if we have a vaccine pass, you've got a vaccine pass. You'll be all right. And then they said, well, actually, you need a 3rd. And in a place like Israel, you need a 4th. And by the way, if you don't have them, then you're not fully vaxxed and you lose your vaccine passport and you go back to being excluded from society in the same way if people have identity, fake vaccines. And a lot of people have gone, this is why they're throwing away lots of these booster vials. People aren't having them because they're going, no, 2's enough. You've lied to me once, no more. And this is all part of what's going on in England big time. So you have this vaccine passport. Now notice what they're calling it. In place after place, country after country, a green pass or a green passport. Why? Because and people that have had the jab and people that still, believe what they're told and lambast and demonize those that haven't, need to remember this. These vaccine passports are the Chinese social credit system under another alias, and through what I call the totalitarian tiptoe technique, they're going to move on and impose on more and more of your life and your life decisions. So the idea is that they've gone from 2 jabs, there you go, there's your pass. Oh no, 3, oh maybe 4. And you can get the 6 and refuse the 7th, and you go back to being excluded from society in the same way that people haven't had any. But then they start introducing other parts of your life.
Well, what do you guys think? I think that's enough. That gives you a big enough picture. Let's see. The main thing is to stay happy. Do not worry. No fear. Only love. Nothing dies. No mistakes. Just move it all. Win-win. Exactly, Jamie. And that's kind of what I do, But, these guys. And, you have to, the guy who does London Real, he's serving his purpose, but he's a businessman. He's definitely looking at the dollar signs. David, on the other side, he is like John the Baptist. He was the voice out in the hinterland. He'd been talking. I met him in 93. I was at a conference, and and everyone thought, what a, and I stopped speaking, meaning once I gave my little speech at the UN, and basically I was like, immediately, I was one of the guys on the dais, they're all the guys with $1,000 suits, and then me looking like this, and they let me be the way I am. Oh, that's Al. That's cool. He's worthwhile. He is our, our Grandpa Smurf. I'm like, I was 10 years younger than all. He's really, we need him, right? Well, they did. Because I put that conference together, brought all these people together. That's what I do. I bring people together. And then, and I was going to be the keynote speaker, and I had to write a speech, and I did about, this technology base, which is, the Tesla, but it was before, it was like, the stuff that the Egyptians were using but didn't understand where it came from. It was the stuff that the Babylonians based, falsely based their banking system, which we're still on. It's that magic. It's all about magic. And there's white magic and black magic, right? And whenever you write anything down, spelling is a spell. Whereas you look at Chinese alphabet and the Hebrew alphabet, each letter is like symbolizes a word, a reference. Hebrew has 6 different meanings to each letter, right? Each letter represents a number, and it's a code. It's like what the Nazis used as the Enigma machine. It was the same thing. That's where they kind of got the friggin' idea. Hold on a second. Hey, get out of here. Go on. Go. 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 Yeah. So not mine, but John's neighbor, the house down below was owned by Jeff. He rents it out to people. And so the folks down below, they don't live there. They live probably in town. And this is like their country estate. And so they have goats and they have chickens. And they don't pen them in. And they have really vicious dogs. And so they haven't been up here in 2 weeks to feed any of them. So they come up here and just in the thing stare, give me food. And that's basically who we are going to be when, the what David is talking about comes true. And they just jumped up to try and jump through the window. They tried to jump up through these windows because it's warm in here and it's cold out there, and they're that desperate. But those people who own those, I want to get back to nature. And I haven't fed them for 2 weeks. I haven't taken care of them. Haven't even thought about them. And that is the problem. No responsibility, not even to yourself or your loved ones, right? And these goats and chickens, I have nothing to give them, It's not my place to. This ain't even my house, right? Tell me, and when he saw them, he went, and wanted I got to kill him. No, just leave them alone. But they're going to be dead soon because no one's feeding them. There's no water that they can drink because everything is frozen, period. frozen, right? I mean, we had 10 inches of snow. Now we have about 6, and it's just one solid ice cube. And people talk about global warming. No, sorry, kids. 3/4 of the rest of the planet in 10 years is going to look like this all the time. This is going to July. See, there's the goats. Can you see the goats? Right over there. Right? And that's the closest thing to a warm place they have. Is over there that is kind of shaded from the snow. So everything down where they are is covered in this ice. See this ice? It's everywhere. See how this snow is? 6 inches thick. And that's what Antarctica is, but it's 2 miles thick. And there's going to be a shifting of the poles, because it has happened, and it's going to happen, right? When it's going to happen, who knows, right? But it's within inside the human gestalt, the human experience, because we were there in other lives. Yeah, we were there, and people, oh, that's not Christian. Well, friggin' Jesus talked about that. You go, and people go, oh, King James, that's the Bible. That's the only Bible. Well, that's a comic book. And you listen. I know the Bible. Yeah, John. I know Bible more than other people know the Bible. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So it's all very interesting. We are asked why I have no case. Hey, John. He ran up. He just tiptoed down and ran back up. We don't watch TV. Throw away TV. I don't do it. And online, I don't even, look at this stuff very cursedly. And that's why David is great. And David has, for many, many, many years, I saw him in 93 and I sold him in the early O's. And I said, hey, you got to talk about other stuff. And he does. Hey, John. So, the goats and chickens the goats try to jump through the window.
What?
Yeah. Because they're so cold that people haven't fed them in 2 weeks and they have no water to drink.
What the heck?
Well, they're right up there. They're right over there.
How do you know they didn't feed them?
Because I can't get down.
Can I eat some food?
But of course, here, let me make it. Really, really have a great meal for you today. Totally vegan. Totally. If you had 4 bowls of this a day, you'd lose 10 pounds in a week.
It'd be a miracle.
Well, then do it.
I felt.
I've been offering it to you for the last 2 weeks, and you just yell at me.
I'm gonna finally quit caffeine. I think I'm gonna do it for good, just forever.
Well, you better. I mean, it would be advisable because
I can't do it
yes, it really does a number on you.
for at least a few years. Just doing none of that for a few years.
Good idea. Good idea.
Because it's not that the caffeine is not the problem.
No?
It's that it interacts with my medicine, I think.
Okay. Then stick on your medicine and give up the caffeine.
No, I can quit both. And a year ago, I quit caffeine and my medicine for 2 months and felt amazing. Had no anxiety.
Okay, that's good.
Had never got the thought of other people's voices.
Good. And
And
then,
no anxiety.
quit it. Do
It
it.
was amazing.
Then do
And I
it.
lost like 20 or 30 pounds.
Then do it.
Lost 20 pounds.
Do it, my friend.
I have felt so awful about my appearance and health. Well, my health is okay, but it's not like it was 2 years ago. Or, I could, I was on my way to being, if I moved away from Virginia instead of moving to this house,
Right?
I probably would be an A-list actor or a big famous
Then
actor.
why didn't you do it?
Because God wanted me, had a different plan for me, I guess. It's not, I'm not angry at it, but it's like, and then my children were taken away from me, I guess, because at the time I had to go through it because I don't know why, but it's not my fault anymore. What I felt. I mean, you know, Jason Momoa is 42.
You go, but tea.
No thanks.
Sure.
What was it? Is it yours?
No, I made it for you. You didn't come
Why
down.
is it? It has a tea bag.
It had tea bags. It had tea bags.
Oh.
I just took them out.
Okay.
But that'll make you feel better.
I thought it looked like it was yours drinking.
No, mine's over. Where's mine? Mine's right here. Mine's here. But I made that. You know, I thought you'd come down for breakfast.
I mean, I had, even a few years ago, I had the looks to be an A-list actor. It was enough. I was really pushy about it. You know, I wasn't mean about it. I worked hard at my appearance.
Well, you know.
And now I'm like 30 pounds heavier than I ever would like to be. And back then, you know, I would get heavy here and there, and I didn't show myself as much. I really had to edit the footage of my face because it made my face look worse. Even 10 years ago, it made my face look worse to have that kind of weight on. And now I've been at one of my heaviest weights, and I used to not work out as heavy, like with running or jumping and stuff like that, because I didn't want to hurt myself when I was that heavy.
Yeah.
And I still look okay because I was about 8 pounds. When I was 8 pounds less, I was in my prime at one time.
Yeah.
When I was only 8 pounds less than this. So it's hard to tell, but it's like I haven't felt that good about my appearance.
Oh, well.
And I haven't been able to, like, well, maybe it's okay. So I think I'm going to quit all my medicine and quit all caffeine.
Well, Ron, it is a good time.
Because
You
the
can't go
caffeine's,
anywhere.
the caffeine's the thing that messes people up when they quit their medicine.
Right.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
not all the time. They don't realize it because they drink it right then. And right when they drink it, they're so happy. It makes them feel amazing right when they drink the caffeine or whatever. And then the next 20 hours or something, 18 hours, their mind is racing. You know, maybe a few hours it's okay. And then they start, their mind's racing stuff. They don't even know it came from the caffeine. But that's why it's doing it.
Yeah.
Because they're slow metabolizer of it stays in their system.
Right.
A lot of those people have schizophrenia, wouldn't have schizophrenia if they didn't have caffeine because they're like allergic to it or something.
Yeah.
They don't know. It's like, yeah, it's
Because
just
some
caffeine.
people it doesn't bother them at all. Other
Yeah.
people it does.
Sometimes
Everybody's
it doesn't bother them at all.
Everybody's different.
I found.
There you go, kiddo.
Wow, I found the food. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, this is amazing.
It is amazing.
That was really nice. Look at this food.
Yeah.
Look how good this looks. This looks amazing.
Every meal I give you is like that, buddy.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't take it anymore. I thought today, after yesterday, my mind was racing for like 20 hours. It was awful. I gave up and wanted to die like 50 times. It was, I don't know how. And then I made it today and I was like, I can't worry about it. It started when I talked to Danica's mom on the phone.
You talked to her on the phone?
And I had tons of caffeine. And this other stuff was bothering me.
When was that? Today or yesterday?
Never mind. I'm gonna eat my food.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
Just because Meatloaf died, I felt like I was his age.
Meatloaf? No,
Yeah,
Meatloaf.
I felt like
He was probably in his 70s.
I felt like I was gonna die, and I had to be like me in my 70s. And then Meatloaf died. And I didn't even listen to his music that much.
He was pretty good.
But it had something to do with my parents and you, and like all my closest people in my life are in their 70s now. Besides my children, of course, but they've been kept away from me. And I don't have a wife as a keeper. And it's felt awful, and it's felt like my appearances were not as good as, like, even a few years ago, I looked like in my prime. When I was 40, I was physically in my prime. I could run up and down this mountain, up that.
Carrying
mountain
100 pounds. You had those barbells in your hands.
And, you know, my face looked pretty close to flawless when I was feeling happy enough and I had the fat off of my body when I wasn't as fat. And then I had to embrace the ideas. I'm not perfect. We age. We all age. We're going to get older anyway. Leave all the results up to God. Do the best you can. And it's put a little more fat, not that much fat on me, but you know, it appears that way in the videos. It's not that bad, but it's been like I put my fingers up to my head and shot myself in the head with a fake gun 40 times yesterday, wanting to die. But then I pretended it was a gun, a ping pong ball falling out of the gun, so it wasn't really hurting me. But barely was hanging on, so I didn't visualize it shooting myself completely in the head and killing myself too much. But even if I did, it's just a thought. How's that going to become a reality? Because
Thoughts become reality.
no,
John.
that's the secret. That's the secret. It's wrong. It's kind of the occult. It's kind of the bad occult.
So what
not
is
the
prayer,
good.
John? Every
I
time
know
you
what good occult is.
pray to God, isn't that the same thing?
No, that's asking God and Jesus for things to be okay and the Bible. I'm gonna eat my food.
Okay.
Wow,
Yeah, it's pretty good.
this is amazing.
Yep.
Way better than I would have imagined.
Oh God, John, I must have made you 1,000 meals just as good as this. And all of this, I bought all of this myself. I brought it here. All the vegetables. I bought all of it. That's the goats at the door. Trying to get in.
They know there's possible food from here. They probably feed them anyway.
No one's fed them in 2 weeks.
Why would they starve them?
Because they can't get up there. And they don't really
Really?
care. Yeah.
Those guys aren't, huh?
No. They haven't been here for 2 weeks.
What the heck? Are you sure?
Yeah, John, I go out there and look every time.
I'll have to give. I don't know if that's true. I think I'll look down at their house and see if they've been planted in their driveway.
You can see that they haven't. The last time they were here was that day that we drove back from your parents and I talked to the guy.
All I gotta do is drive to the bottom of the mountain and walk up and give them food.
Yeah, he doesn't do it.
I don't.
I talked to Tim today. It's still, he almost drove his truck up the road. I mean, he was coming down.
Oh no!
When he drove up Tuesday, what is it, Friday? I guess it was Tuesday. He waited Monday.
He probably wears his seatbelt. I doubt he'd hurt even if a car fell off the mountain. It's not gonna fall.
Well,
off the
his
mountain.
vehicle would be ruined, that's for sure.
He can afford it. It would suck, but his insurance would cover it.
Well, he's smart enough.
It would suck if he almost got hurt, though. That's the thing.
He was smart enough not to do it. So he left the vehicle down. So Tuesday when he drove up, it took him an hour to get from the paved road up to his place, an hour. And he had chains on the wheels. So he said the road is still, he said, don't come down. And we're even worse. I mean, there have been people going up and down it, so there's somewhat of a path. We have no path.
I guess his car's okay.
Yeah.
He was gonna help us with it, or help me with it at my house. His truck.
Mm-hmm. Luckily, I took the garbage we had down
You did?
before, Saturday when I went down. I took all the garbage from here, not from up what you got upstairs. I have no idea what you have upstairs.
I don't keep it where I live. I don't keep it.
You keep
I
it,
keep it in the house somewhere, obviously.
well, in the
But why'd you
storage.
say all the garbage up there in my room?
Because you
Where I
told
stay?
me, John,
I
that you
didn't
put it
do
up there. You told me you left it all up there. You said you had
It's
to
in
move
the
it.
attic. Okay, you can eat the food. It's good. Don't worry about it.
Every time you start to
Great.
go at me like this, I have to say, praise Jesus, praise Jesus, praise Jesus.
I think that cat is tricking you into thinking that I did something wrong when the cat.
Oh, it's a cat's
the
fault.
cat
Oh,
didn't-
cat, it's your fault.
The
Cat,
cat
Vinny,
didn't
it's
do
your
it.
fault.
No, it
It's all
didn't.
you're the Satan, cat,
No.
or Satan.
No,
That's or
You're not-
Satan. Praise Jesus.
no, please. So is this all I'm allowed?
No,
Oh, you must have made a bunch of food.
I did.
Is it for you to eat today?
No, it's for us to eat today.
Okay. We're blaming others.
I'm not.
Let's stop blaming others.
Good idea.
Something's annoying you.
No, you. Every time you attack me,
I didn't attack you.
John, I've been around you 7 years. I know how you start to wind up
eating the food.
and eat the food and don't constantly talk. Praise Jesus.
This is really good food.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to be dead.
Well, you won't have long to wait.
Not even fucking funny. No rest allowed. Unrest. We're in an awful existence. I can't wait to die.
John, you're already dead.
No, I'm not.
You're living in purgatory right now.
I don't want to hurt my physical body to have to suffer by saying I have things wrong with my body and then have pain in addition to the difficulty I already have.
Well, you're already in purgatory.
I'd like to actually get to enjoy this food.
Well,
I
then
think all of it is good.
focus on the food and stop talking about wanting to
I
die.
probably won't think this way later.
Really?
And I'm gonna quit caffeine. That's like their way to annoy you into unrest. I hate unrest.
Yes.
Makes me want to die. Like every moment, constantly having to do some awful thing.
Don't do it. Don't let that negative thought come in your mind.
I have no idea why you did that. I was just trying to eat food. Don't think about it.
Yeah, don't think about it.
This is good. This has that good cheese.
Yep.
I don't care if I'm dead. As long as there's no pain and suffering anymore. I mean, I don't have pain. I don't want to add that to what's already made me want to die. It's so difficult continuing living.
John,
So I don't need an additional
John.
thing. Yeah. Oh, okay. Eat the food.
focus on how good it is for you. Focus on how it's going to have you lose weight and look terrific.
I've given up and wanted to die and looked it up on the computer how to die.
John,
Thousands
John,
of times.
John,
That's how awful
John.
my life feels.
Just enjoy the food. It's really good.
No one out there watching this was as depressed as I was. That's how depressed I felt. The only reason why I haven't killed myself is because God didn't want to allow me to kill myself. God wanted me to keep living. So maybe it'll get okay again.
It's okay now. You have a choice every second
Maybe.
for it to be really great. I mean, I hear you laughing hysterically upstairs, so it must be pretty good.
Oh yeah. For a few seconds of a few hours, I laughed out loud hysterically.
Right. So it was pretty good. It was that funny. It was okay. Just keep yourself in that feeling of okay.
Maybe it'll be okay again. I felt good. I felt okay and really good almost all of 2020. This is really good food. Maybe you want to hear how depressed somebody is, but it had to be recording when I came down to finally eat food. That's okay.
John, you record
I'm not
everything.
really depressed.
If you record everything, why can't I record everything?
Okay.
You always have you're always making a video.
It's
of
not
you.
what it's about. I know that life is more important than your work, especially when you got back 1% of what you thought you would for your life's work, which is what happened to me. But life still is more important than your actual work, and I know that's true. And yeah, I was thinking back at one more thing that I had to say.
Life is about the
No,
journey,
no.
not the finish line.
Yeah, because the finish line apparently
It's death.
that means that there's some guy who's my cousin. No, I mean a goal. When you have a goal, it'd be good to actually see some of that happen. There's nothing wrong with that. But a
It's
finish
getting
line
there.
in particular,
If you talk to
a finish
anybody
line-
who's an A-lister, they will tell you that the best part of their life was getting to that, and what they try and do.
No, that's not true. David Lee Roth says he remembers back before he got famous,
Mhm.
and it was an awful feeling time. He had to carry speakers on top of a van in the rain all himself and do all that stuff.
Yep.
And he said he would never want to go back to that. He said it felt awful until he finally made it. And that's how it really felt for him.
Who was the guy who's my friend who was a fireman, who's now a pretty big actor?
Steve Buscemi.
Buscemi, that's the actor. Buscemi, Steve Buscemi.
He made it, we didn't. No one out there watching it made it. We're fucking failures. They're famous, we're not. They're big A-listers, we're getting 120 views.
John,
They're going to die.
but see, that's it's all a matter of point of view. My point of view is that
And that's 10% of my problem. All the love and acceptance I had at home was taken away from me when my wife was convinced to leave me and bring the kids.
you had nothing to do with that, right?
I don't know.
It was not, you were 100% there all the time. Those 3 years that they were in Tamaran, you were going down there every day and playing with the kids and being a dad, right?
May I explain something to you?
Sure, go for it.
Is there a reason why I stayed at this house and did not go out every day? When you were living here before, you would get in your car and go out almost every day because you enjoy doing that and it doesn't affect you in a negative way. Do you realize there are some people who don't like to socialize in an environment where things did not happen for them and it doesn't make them happy to face that, that's God's work. Those people are nothing like me other than they believe in God and Jesus, and that's something I have in common. The rest of it, their careers, the things they do, it's really difficult finding some common ground, and it's wrong. And it's wrong for me to share that kind of love and close any amount of non-sexual, of course, because no sex is allowed, interaction with others for too long. Because
Why is
some
that,
of it's
why is that
they're
wrong?
real people. I'm supposed to be kind to them
Why is it wrong?
because it makes me realize that my you know, because I realized that my kids are in Texas.
But you could be in Texas with your kids. You have a
That's
vast
Texas.
You have a vast.
That is where
knowledge.
George Bush, the entire George Bush family is from.
John, don't you
Did
realize?
you know that all growing up, Tipper Gore, who was on the Bush administration, was against almost all of the music that I listened to growing up
Yeah.
that gave me hope for a future to finally have things okay when I was finally done going to their schools. And that's where my kids were taken to. But it's not that bad there in real life. I mean, there are minorities, there are different kinds of people, and you can act kind of politically how you want. I'm sure you couldn't go too big with it. But you know, you can kind of act however you want. If you want to do a big YouTube channel, they're not going to be against it. They're okay if you being yourself. They have Democrats, liberals, Republicans.
Yep.
It's not that bad, but going there is like
It would be better.
they're there. There's not much else that I would ever
Your children
really
are
want to
there.
go to there. I want to go there for them.
Your children are there.
Yeah, they're there. However, what happens when I show up there? You know what happens? You know how I'm greeted?
That
I
doesn't
have
matter.
to take a cab or get an Uber all on my own after traveling 8 hours by myself to go to a hotel room, a cheap hotel room probably, so it doesn't take too much money from me to stay by myself. And that's how I'm greeted, by being with my own children.
Well, did you ever ask them why you can't stay there when you arrive to see your children?
Because of her mother. Because of her mother.
Did you ever talk to her mother and say, "Hey, why are you being so negatively antagonistic?"
But I don't want her to die of a heart attack, which may happen
Everyone dies. John.
because of her own determination to try to keep me away from there.
Yeah.
And she's doing it to herself.
No kidding.
She's trying to make it difficult for me to go, I think. But I don't know what I'm talking about sometimes.
I don't know.
And she's the one who kind of turned her against me, I think. But I don't know if that's true or not.
You mean you had nothing to do with it?
You know, Danica chose to want to be like her parents and hide behind their sin and their sinful ways of love of money and looking down on the poor and calling people worthless or saying it without having to say it out loud, and then getting the kids to all call others garbage, trash, worthless.
Your
If they don't
kids,
have- if they don't
your
have
kids
money.
call other people trash and worthless?
Well, Rowan started calling kids outright trash, and that was the thing they were pretending to cover up. It was all Danica's father's fear that drove him, that someone called him white trash or something in the early 70s. And he's so worried about it, he spent his entire life working to prove he'll never be trash, and then looking down at poor people and thinking they're worthless. I think that's their word, worthless.
What would Jesus Christ say about that?
Well, he's going to be judged. And I know, I've gotten a good feeling that, I can kind of be kind to him here and there. And she really loves him, and she's close to him. Danica loves her father, and she loves her mother, but they got into some sin that's not that great. Well, it's okay. Her mom may
Doesn't Danica love the fact that her father pays her bills?
Well, she was making $72,000 a month, 1 month.
1 month.
And other months she was paying her bills okay because I believed in her, and she worked hard at it. But no one ever believed in me like that, for it to really go as huge and big and amazing as possible, for it to really happen and be there supporting her emotionally every step of the way, looking at something, finding something good with any video she put up and saying why it's good and making her believe that she's really good at what she does and she's that good. Encouraging her like I did to my children to teach them art, why they got good at art. And
You don't think it has anything to do with them intrinsically?
they worked hard at it too, yeah. When someone really believes in you and tells you things like you're skinny or whatever things that people do, like Justin Bieber's mother was there for him till it was normal and okay for him to work at that stuff. And it was okay for him to go as big as possible with it. There was nothing trying to in in a limited in a way to try to say, oh, he can't really do it because of this reason, because he's got to be like family, like how everyone else's parents do it. And it's not about sin. It's not about big meanness and sin like those big conglomerate people when they have more money. Sometimes it may be, and sometimes it may be not. But when someone believes in you to really go as big as possible without doing anything mean or bad, and they really are that good at what they do and they work at it that hard, then it goes big. But I've grown a little bit bitter, and I can't blame the people in my life for not believing in me. I can't blame
I
them.
believe in you. I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in you.
I've gotten something in return for my work, but not like I've thought. So I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's good enough for now, but I'd rather be dead. I don't want to live.
But when you do,
It hasn't happened for me.
when
No
you
matter how
create-
hard I worked at my actual work. So, and in the future, you know what might happen next year?
What?
How am I going to pay my bills? How I pay my bills? Might have
the
to,
same way you paid the bills
might have
this
to be
year.
thrown out of my house
I don't think so.
to barely survive and have to be worried about really
Your
doing
parents
stuff
will
to make
never
money.
allow that to happen, John.
How do I know?
Because they did it
Then
all.
why at the end of 2014
Right.
was I shown a waking nightmare of hell and had to go out there and work in a literal waking nightmare of hell? People being pulled up on crosses with a goat head pulled up on them, breaking their legs and half,
That was happening.
breaking their body, beating the fuck out of them, tormenting every waking moment so there's no rest from it. And then ushering in his daughter, a 16-year-old daughter, to come and suck his dick as his only escape from the beatings and shit, to try to let him have some rest as with his 16-year-old daughter sucking his dick as the only way to feel okay, to bring him further and further into
And that was
hellish
happening in Roanoke,
sin,
Virginia.
either
in
sexual sin
2014.
or destruction and evil and shit of the
That
that's what I looked out in my backyard and saw out the back window, a show put on, and just fucking the lights turned off. The show was shown to be that show.
Right.
All these different shows when I didn't get enough sleep from trying to quit the fucking medicine that Danica's father wanted me to take, to say that I was crazy, so she'd feel better about herself, like she wasn't crazy because he thought she was crazy too. And then it made us get along enough, and I took the blame for that. And then she made me feel really confident about my appearance and looks for the first time ever, rather than unrelentingly feeling awful about myself. No matter how hard I tried to fit in, I thought there's something wrong with my body, and there's nothing wrong
Was
with it.
this in Virginia?
It was from when I was 14 or 15 up until I was about 20 something, when I had met Danica. And then finally I was confident about my appearance. Every inch of my appearance, I felt okay, like the other people got to feel.
No, but I'm talking about the images that you saw.
Oh, that was at the end of 2014. I had not slept in 2 weeks. So this hell, that's what it was. I didn't know at the time, and I had to
And
keep
Danica,
quiet about what I had seen.
were you living with
Because
Danica?
it was terrifying.
2014, were you living with Danica?
No.
When did you stop? When did she stop living with you?
They went to Texas 2 other times.
Oh.
And they only stayed a year and a half, and it was awful. Every day was so awful, made me so sad and want to die. I had depression, anxiety. It was awful with them there. And by some miracle, they moved back both times.
So you're expecting them to move back again?
Well, this time it's been 4 years and 8 months.
Yeah, almost 5 years.
4 years and 8 months.
Yeah, almost 5 years.
So this time the depression was the worst. I got depressed thousands of times. I mean, not just depressed, but wanted to kill myself. Looked up every way to do it. Yesterday, I looked up how to buy a shotgun, how to buy guns in the mail and assemble them. So that was yesterday. And it's not even sad anymore. I have no one to share the sadness. That would be coming from someone watching the video.
What about me,
That kind of
John? You're
sadness,
sharing-
for me to even be allowed to cry.
You are here.
It's really
I'm
awful
here
feeling.
to be.
Sometimes it's not always. Sometimes it's okay. It got okay again. But usually I haven't been crying as much, and I don't cry for myself. I mean, that's like almost, it'd be crying because, are the kids going to be okay or not? That'd be the only reason I'd cry. And it's like, I haven't been allowed to cry really. It's like,
Well, if
it's
you,
just, I know I
if you
want to
killed
die,
yourself, that would
but I don't want to
scar
be
your
taken away. I'm
children
not going to kill
for
myself.
the rest
I'm
of
not
their
going to
lives.
kill myself. I'm not going to kill myself. Yeah, they maybe die too, but so far they're kind and good people.
Even though
So,
no one caused poor
I mean,
people trash.
It was you. Oh, that's a little mistake. That kid's trash or something. It's not that bad. He's a really good kid. I know he's a good kid.
So why don't you have him live with you here? It would be good. For
Because
both of you.
it made me sad. It made me sad to think that I would only be with him. And where's Danica and the kids?
Yeah, but you couldn't be
Where are we
happy.
at home?
You couldn't
Walking around,
enjoy.
going to the
You
refrigerator.
couldn't enjoy
doing the
being
things
with your
that we
son.
do.
You couldn't enjoy being with your son, having fun with your son, teaching your son things.
Where would the baby be? Where would Ivan be? Would they be okay?
And they would be as okay as they are right now without you. But at least Rowan would have you in his life.
How do you know they're okay? Because I've relentlessly written to them, called them, texted them, talked to them on video chat, gotten through to them, made all my videos about God and Jesus. So if they watched any of my videos, they'd see that first and they know how to be, so they'd be okay. And because I had to work at something that didn't really want to die, the other kind of working in the house also was not easy. These floors were the fun thing. This was okay. This only took 3 or 4 weeks to paint the floors. The rest of it took 4 years. 4 years of work.
But you had
However you
people,
want to put that, it was 4 years of full-time work at a little more than 5 hours a day for 5 days a week. That's barely considered full-time. A little
John,
more than 5
but
hours
you
a
had
day,
people
5 days a
helping you.
week
You
for
had
4
people
years
helping
and
you.
4 months.
you had Mike.
When they were here,
Mike
it felt
did, Mike did.
sometimes it was okay,
Right.
and then it would become shit like that because the money was coming from my dad, and he did not want me to spend. He wanted me to be the one having to do all the work, and they tried to make me like a workhorse with working at all this fucking stuff with the only window, their window that they put right here, that this was allowed to see results, or this was allowed to the results of my work. They knew I worked really hard at my films and videos, but they helped me do the work of the films and videos. But I think they always thought, I don't know, it's not their fault. I don't know. But they think that my mom has said she thought I can work at anything. Anything.
She's
be
right.
good at.
You can't.
No, that's not true. I can't work at any random thing. That's awful. I can't work at any random thing. That's awful. And that's what I had to do, working at their kind of thing. I didn't like it that much. But it was better than like having to go do some really bad stuff, But it was still made me sad and depressed and want to kill myself. I had to do it so much. It literally made me want to kill myself. I do not like it. I don't like it. I don't like doing it. There's about 20% of it that can be okay.
I would say
And
that
it
everyone
may be-
who's
I
watching
don't know what it's going to be like.
on the YouTube right now, and there are quite a few there. They all have to do stuff they don't want to do. They all have lives that.
Does it make them want to kill themselves?
Well, some of them, yes, but
They're just their work, not the other stuff too.
no, they're
Which-
ones- they're-
When I wasn't working at the job and when my kids were here, I was happy and I wasn't depressed. I didn't have any problems. There were 2 small incidents that made me depressed, but generally I wasn't depressed at all when I had my kids around, especially when I wasn't having to work at the stuff my parents wanted me to work at. But that, there's maybe some hope of that being okay in the future and somehow being different. But I can't even say the word future because my dad, I think, is afraid he'll die in the future. It's not going to be that good because his body's old now. And he thinks, how much better is he even going to be in the future? So I can't say the word future. I can't even say it because I'm close to him. And I know that anxiety comes a little from them, but I don't want them to die and see if, hey, finally there's no hemorrhage anxiety. That's awful. I for a short time, I almost thought that when I was younger, and I was like, wow, this is wrong. And then I had to stand up for my parents being okay. Because it finally it would not get okay. It was like an unrelenting unrest, kind of having to work at stuff a bunch.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, psychologist? Therapist? Are you a therapist?
No,
You're a therapist.
I'm a friend.
But a therapist.
Basically, John, back in the day, yes, I did that as a job. But that was last time I did it when I was certified. That was 1993 and 4. Last time I did this as a career. Now, I have schooling, I have education, I have experience, but I can't be called, or I will not be called, a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I am a griot. So I can tell you a story about what I think about all of this. I can do that. You want to hear a story?
Well, I think I got the idea of what you said. Some of what you were telling me to be helpful was do things more that I enjoy and feel happy about.
Right. So, like, John, when you do the videos, like when I do these things, I don't care about how many likes I get or what the algorithm says, or I'm not.
Well,
it's
I'm not
advertised.
it's kept our channels going.
It's
kept our channels going.
I don't get any money out of this.
We've gotten views. You kind of have a lot of followers.
I do.
For having started a YouTube page a couple of years ago.
2.5 years.
Good.
Yeah, right. So no, and
it's okay.
But my attitude is that it's quality over quantity, and I don't spend money, so I don't really worry about money, and. I serve, every time you say, oh, you go down and have a good time with people. Really, every time I go down to help folk.
You like sitting in a restaurant. It's almost traumatic for me. Well,
I know it is.
Okay.
I've been with you in restaurants. I
can go to a restaurant. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's okay. But not when good old young 18-year-old cowboy boot wearing blonde hair guys sit down at the table right next to us.
Why should that?
They hate minorities.
How do you know they do?
And they're right there.
How do you know they do?
Oh, come on. You know they do.
No.
I'm talking like this so they don't hurt me or mentally or physically or shit. They aren't going to do that.
John.
But they will make you look like a bad guy because they're in the South. And that's the only thing you're never allowed to say because you got to live here because God wants you here. And you got to talk like this. And they'll probably get me to be a little racist later because I called them out on it. Of course, they'll get me to do some shit like that.
John, that is correct. But they're not racist in that they are a product of their environment. We live in this environment where people go along to get along. And John has just been a perfect example of that by his excellent representation of a redneck. And so, yes, all the rednecks.
Why have I had to live in the South when my parents are from New York?
You had a choice, John. When you went up to New York to be with your nanny,
and you could have stayed about going to New York. What would I do there? They don't have a film industry that much.
Please.
They kind of do.
New York has they do a tremendous amount of television work there, and that's the movies. It's the same industry.
It's not like Los Angeles.
Well, sure it isn't. It's New York. It's a totally different place.
It's not like Los Angeles. 80% of the film industry.
Then why don't you go to? See, John, the thing.
I like Los Angeles best.
Then go to Los Angeles. Why don't you go there? Go there.
My kids, because God wants me here.
That's a pretty big cop-out.
My kids are
God wants you to do. No, God, you can't.
It's not a cop-out. I'm trying to do with the. You mean to think I can just sell this house and go to LA and then finally feel okay out there?
Yeah.
Every day being myself.
Yes.
Not like an angry at Southerners person.
Yep.
Not like a who cares what it is.
Yep.
But I mean, out there, it has felt not that good. And I wasn't supposed to say this, but it's gone on so long that I've just started saying it out loud how I felt. And I was
It's
supposed
good,
to try
it's
to
good
make
to
it
get
work.
it out. Get it.
I
It's
think
better
I
that you
feel
get
that
it
I was
out.
supposed to try to make it work here, or maybe I'm supposed to try to make it work here. But I cannot see what benefit living in Roanoke is for me at all.
Then go.
I can't see it at all.
Leave.
No, but I think God wants me to live here, and I don't know why.
Well, ask him.
It's not because I'm scared to leave. I like Los Angeles.
So you went to,
I feel good there.
back a
I
couple
feel
years
good out in
ago,
public there.
3 or 4 years
I can
ago.
go to a restaurant and feel like, hey, I did movies my entire life, and I'm good at what I do, and they respect that there for once.
Okay.
When I go into town down there, it feels like keep your mouth shut.
The battery is getting low, so I'm gonna say, see you later. I'll try tonight. Okay. Love you guys. I think this was a good show. 3 hours, 30 seconds. Perfect.
I'm sorry. Now it feels awful.
No, it don't feel
It
awful.
was like you like making me feel bad or something like